Yo, what's shaking, everybody? Welcome to a Thursday edition of House Divided. I'm Jeff Ketchum. I'm back. I'm also the Shogun of the Woodlands. I wish I could still say I was the Shogun of Cedar Park or the Shogun of Austin. But when you've been away for like over 2 years, you have to take over. I'm coming to grips with the fact that I'm no longer a current Austinite, no matter how much I fake it. That is Chad Hastings. He never fakes it, and neither does his wife. They are non-fakers all the time. The non-fakers of Elgin, do us a solid. Don't fake. Don't you dare fake hitting that like button. Actually do it. Subscribe to the channel. Get notifications. Do all of the things that the non-fakers do. We're going to have fun for the next 3 hours. We've got Brian Jones. It's a Thursday, so we might as well have – what is his nickname for our show?
Wow, I haven't thought of a nickname for Brian Jones. Sometimes I called him old number 60, but then of course Tommy Nobis wore 60. Brian's the last guy to wear it for a whole season. I don't know. I haven't thought of a nickname for Brian, but I just look forward to nickname. Yeah, I just look forward to the swearing. He's sworn at me in a loud manner this season. He's sworn in hushed tones when his wife is around. Brian is now happily married to a woman who doesn't like swearing. So I let him swear.
How happily married can you be
once a week
if your wife doesn't like you to swear?
Well, I couldn't be, but that I'm not going to put that on other people's marriages. I married a woman who swears, and she swore like 2 or 3 dates in. It was one of the sexiest things I'd ever heard, and I knew she might be the one. But that's me.
Jones.
I'm not going to put that on other people. I just, Brian's happy.
I just wonder where the other overcompensation comes from.
Oh, I don't know. But
like if you're not, you know how no, I'm not going to use that example. I'm going to filter myself.
Filters are good. Filters are good. I'm sure there's compensation both ways. I'm sure there's things that Brian would rather she not do that she doesn't do. I wonder
if she's a good cook.
Maybe.
Because I don't have a wife that my wife's never made me a meal in 16 years.
Is that right? Because I'll tell you that's a magical part, Ketch. If my wife threatened to take away the meatloaf, I would say shucks for the rest of my life.
Maybe that's why I curse so much.
Maybe that's it. I get both. I get to curse and I get the meatloaf. But if she said meatloaf and King Ranch and that chicken dish and I listed them all off, all that stuff you like, it's gone if you swear. Then I'll be Chucky Darns and shut the front door forever.
Golly,
dang.
Every day, one of the conversations that takes place in my home is, hey, so what are we doing for dinner? And never one time has my wife replied, oh, I'm making this, or I'm doing this, or I've prepared this. It's usually, oh no.
Oh. Hey.
Now, to be fair, like you said, she compensates in other areas.
No, that's the thing.
I love her.
Right. You got to have the compensation. The next time my wife takes the trash out will be time number 1. The next time she unloads the dishwasher will be time number 3 or 4. But the food thing is taken care of, and I know that one. So.
I'm just wondering, I think I could answer the question, Ketch, you don't get meals made, even if it doesn't look that way. And where are the areas? And I could say, well, occasionally I'll walk outside on Thursdays. Not today, mind you. But sometimes on Thursdays, the trash cans will be taken to the curb. You're telling me that has never once happened in the Hastings household?
No, she'll transport it. The transportation has happened. But actually putting it all in there, that's my job. Now, occasionally, she will transport it out to the street. So
we'll tell you right now, we're going to be talking a lot of Jaylen Daniels today, and he is the trash man. He is the cook. He is the provider. He's the love maker. Whatever Kansas needs him to be, that's what he does as the Kansas quarterback. We're going to be talking a lot about KU Texas today. an interesting game in that it's a challenge for Texas that they have to make sure that they know is a challenge for Texas. And I don't get the sense that Steve Sarkeesian has any doubts that his team knows that they're in for a battle on Saturday. But it is one of those games where Texas fans, I think, are expecting an absolute ass kicking because there is number 3 in the country. And it could prove to be a little bit of a trickier game than that. We've not yet seen Texas flex their muscle at home in a home game this season. They plodded their way at times through Rice. They absolutely plotted their way through that game against Wyoming until they had a flurry of 3 scores in about 6 or 7 minutes that was so dynamic. You wonder if there's even a nickname for it behind the scenes for when they go on these 21-0 runs.
Wow. You know,
that is an inside joke that Chad couldn't help but crack.
That was good. That was good. I almost want to make it. I almost want to bring it outside, but if you don't want to, we won't. Here's what I'll ask before we get into Daniels. Sark has his press event with the media on Thursdays, the Zoom call and everything. Anything come out of that for you? Injuries, comments, something that came out of that we should know about?
I think there wasn't anything newsworthy at all that came out of today's press gathering. It was, I don't know how to describe what today. It was so non-eventful. It didn't need to take place.
Was it my 2 words to describe the best Sark? Effectively boring. Was he effectively boring?
There just wasn't anything for him to swing at today.
Okay.
Everything was low and outside, and there just wasn't a lot of meat on the bone. I thought the most interesting thing that came out of today's press conference, or availability, if you will, somebody asked him for a Cole Hudson update, which he gave, which it doesn't sound like Cole Hudson is going to be back by OU. You know, when that injury first happened, they said, well, the goal, I think, would be for him to come back for the Oklahoma game. But if he doesn't, he'll get the bye week. And then the anticipation would be hopefully he'll be ready to go by the time they come out of their bye week and what now at this point would be 3 or 4 weeks away. He was asked if he had a backup offensive lineman, somebody on the backup offensive line who he felt was pushing for more playing time. And that feels like a softball, right? Like it's a chance to throw some flowers towards a backup that's been working real hard in practice. And Sarkeesian said, no, we're happy with our 5.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Like I said, it's not a headline. Sarkeesian happy with 5 offensive linemen, doesn't want to see backups play. But, it would have been a chance for him to say something along the lines of, NATO is playing really well. Cam Williams plays like a starter in practice, but we're so deep. He said, we're happy with our 5. So it's like, oh, okay. Well, I guess nobody on that backup offensive line is pushing for playing time.
So that old saying on another position where they say if you have 2 quarterbacks or 3 quarterbacks, you really have none. In this case, we know that if you have 5 offensive linemen, sometimes you don't have 8. Is that what you're telling me? You don't have 8 or 9 or 10.
What I'm telling you is that Steve Sarkeesian was given an opportunity to praise anybody on that offensive line that his little heart desired to praise. And he decided to just keep it short and simple. And we like our 5 guys.
All right.
I was like, oh, okay. So for all of you who are like, they need to be putting NATO in or Cam Williams needs to move to guard, what you need to know is that your head coach thinks you should shut the hell up. They like their 5. And you know what? I mean, it's easy to see why. They've got the best tackle pairing in the Big 12, I think by a mile. Nobody is as good as what Texas has right now in Kelvin Banks and Christian Jones, who Christian Jones has, by the way, been so good that I think he's actually been better than Kelvin Banks so far this season, which is crazy to say in a lot of different ways. DJ Campbell's growing up. He's so good for 7 out of 10 plays. He'll have 2 average plays, and then 1 out of those 10 will make you think, what the hell are you doing? But 7 of the other 10 look like an all-star type stuff. So as he gets a little bit more consistent, plays a little bit more football, they like what they've got there. Jake Majors is playing very effective football. Hayden Conner's turned into the guy that probably needs to raise his game the most. But I can't remember watching a game this season where I was like, they need to take Hayden Conner out of the game. He's keeping them from being able to have success. I don't think they're having that. I think Steve Sarkeesian has reason to have confidence in his 5 guys. I also think it probably speaks, one of the things he didn't say about Cole Hudson, there wasn't such specificity. Thank you.
Oh, you're close. Almost there. Ready?
No, I'm going to give up.
There. No?
Wait. I'm going to do what somebody in the media today for the Longhorns didn't do. I'm just going to not do it. I'm going to stop. I'm going to take that specificity.
Ooh, almost. Specificity.
Specificity. See? Wave that white flag. Sometimes it's better just to scream uncle than it is to pretend that you're somebody's aunt. No, I think he's got the offensive line. He didn't go into a return for Cole Hudson that made you think he was staying up at night worried about how quickly they could get Cole Hudson back. He's happy with his 5. I think this is probably what they had in mind with that 5 when they got started. And that was probably the most interesting thing about today's press conference. I really, there was a lot of questions about Kansas, and he answered them. It was total coach speak. Oh, they're good, hard-nosed football team. They've got good running backs. They've got good quarterbacks. It was very much what you just said. Mm-hmm. It was boring Sark.
Yeah, they're well coached. Yeah,
effective. Yeah. There wasn't really a headline beyond the one that I just told you. And I don't think most people probably would have heard that and thought anything of it. It's just, that's the way my brain works. It's like, okay, I see you, Sark. But he clearly wasn't trying to, I think, create any friction with his offensive line behind the starters. But he also went out of his way in saying that my 5 are my 5 was his way of saying, don't run that story where you think one of my guys is being pushed by somebody behind them. It's not happening.
Right. No, that's good. I think that's good news if you're a Texas fan. So coming off of that, we are going to talk about Texas and Kansas and Jaylen Daniels. Real quick, I just want to throw some positivity at the Specs chat. I'm occasionally peeking over here and seeing multiple things. First off, people sending you the phonetic pronunciation of specificity. I really enjoy that. They're trying to help you out.
Hold on. We got Sherman here is.
They're trying to help you out.
Specificity.
There you go. See? They're trying to help you. I'm also watching, Ketch, people on the Specs chat discuss Orangebloods.com and becoming an Orangebloods subscriber. And one recommends it and another says, yeah, I think I am going to jump in. Hey, I'm this handle. Hey, shoot me this message. So might be a good time to check that out too. Orangebloods.com War Room is coming up tonight. So I just want you to know, Ketch, your community is at work.
Just want to say, I, me, myself, and I, Spessa, Sessa, T.
No, so close. You need it. You're going to need it. You're going to need it. By the way, here's our first super chat of the day. Texas boy, just $1.99 hooked on Phonics Fund. Right there.
I think it costs more to get hooked on Phonics
than
$1.99. We need some more contributors to get me to the hooked on Phonics. I do, though, personally. Me, myself, and I have a couple of notes for the War Room that I think I'm saving. I haven't mentioned them on the show. Yes, I'm going to be a tease.
There you go. By the way,
did you hear that Taylor Swift is going to be at the Jets game this weekend? 2 games in a row. She's taken Swift tour to follow Kelsey on the road this week. It might be love, Chad.
Well, it definitely could be. It could be a real relationship. Imagine that. That's what I was telling everybody from
turning to Jessica Simpson with Tony Romo.
I want to believe in these. Yeah, hopefully this one doesn't end with a weird boat story. But yeah, and by the way, this may be the person I'm talking about. C. Sherman, I became a member. You can too. Right there with Orangebloods. See, that's the messaging there. But yes, I did read that, Ketch, and remember, if my Swiftie dad calendar is correct, I get updated on this all the time from my Swiftie fan daughter. I think the World Tour resumes in November, late October, early November. So Taylor is in a break time right now. So if she's going to get herself to games and support Travis, if this is indeed a budding relationship, she doesn't have a ton of time to do it. So I'd look for the next couple of Chiefs games, and then she's probably going to have to jump back off the radar because she's got to get on tour.
I can't even remember when Tony Romo and Jessica Simpson were dating.
Mm-hmm.
She turned into the bad luck charm, but I can't remember what happened that made her the bad luck charm other than they lost a game that she was, and it wasn't the Giants playoff game. It was way before that.
I think it was a division game. She was in attendance in a pink 9 jersey, and everybody freaked out because they're Cowboys fans, and that's what we do. We freak out about everything.
Even today, if I'm watching a Cowboys game or a Longhorns game or a Liverpool game, anything, right? If my wife walks in and something bad happens, she's like, "Oh, here I'm Jessica Simpson all over again." It's like, wow.
Yeah, no, it became a thing. Hopefully the Taylor thing doesn't go there. I mean, obviously they shredded Chicago. She picked the right game to start with. Obviously they were playing less than an NFL team, and the Jets don't look great right now either after the quarterback situation. So, and this one's in New York, or is it still Kansas City?
This is where it gets dangerous.
So she goes on the road for this one.
She's going on the road for this one, and we know that those can be dangerous just in general in the NFL.
Yeah. That's true.
Man, let the Chiefs lose in New York. She'll never be allowed into another stadium as a guest of Travis Kelce again without the cameras finding her and like making it into a thing.
And by the way, I just double checked it, Ketch. That's also Sunday Night Football. That means Carrie Underwood on the intro, Taylor Swift in the broadcast. I mean, you talk about getting a younger demo. That's nailing it right there.
Speaking of a younger demo, we're going to start talking some Kansas Jaylen Daniels here momentarily. Mm-hmm. And I can just see the younger demo pouring into the YouTube app to listen and watch our show. Oh yeah. Younger demos are just spilling over.
You know, the kids love Kansas quarterbacks. That's what they want. Kids are all about the KU quarterback.
By the way, Al Michaels isn't dirty old man necessarily, but if I set the over and under at middle of the second quarter for him to say not a dirty Taylor Swift pun, but
now, hold on, stop. Let me stop you. It's not him anymore. That's Mike Tirico.
Oh, that's right.
Al Michaels is Thursday nights.
That's right. He's doing the never mind. Forget about
By the way, side comment. Have you ever seen two broadcasters you respect more have less chemistry than Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit? I am mystified by their chemistry. It's so awkward. I just can't get past it.
I don't think Herbstreit is good, and I think Al Michaels knows it and can't hide it.
Okay, that's probably fair because he treats him like a guy that only knows a little college football and knows no NFL football, and he just you're right. I think you nailed it. Yeah, he can't hide the fact that he doesn't think Kirk Herbstreit's up to it.
Because Al Michaels generally likes. I mean, he was with Collinsworth for so long.
Yeah,
and you could tell like he respects him, and you know that. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, he's cashing checks.
Okay, fair enough. All right.
Michael says in our second super chat.
Second super chat.
Somebody was hooking me up on phonics earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Kansas has only played on the road once to an absolutely horrendous Nevada and almost lost. They haven't proven yet they can play well on the road. Well, Michael, to that point, has Texas proven that it can play well at home? I mean, because they've only played 2 home games, and one of them, people on Orangebloods.com were melting down at halftime because they weren't beating the hell out of Rice enough. And on the second one, Wyoming took them to the fourth quarter at 10-10. So these will be 2 teams that haven't proven yet that they can do the thing that they're being asked to do on Saturday. How about that?
No, that is fair. That is fair. You know what else is fair, Ketch? I need to give credit, not a super chat, but let's give credit to Mark. Can everybody just focus in like Mark? Mark says, I'm a little late, but 1 like from my phone on the drive home, and now 1 more from my PC. That's what I'm talking about, Mark. When Ketch says pound that like button, Mark is listening. Well done, Mark. Thank you.
And that should be a lesson to all of you. Right. I know you all have more than one device. Use them.
There you go.
Use them. Multiple likes from multiple devices. If Mike can do it, why can't you?
That's right. You got 2 thumbs. Might as well have at least 2 likes.
How about that? More than 2 people in your household. Let everybody be accounted. Treat it like the census. We count everybody.
That's right. Everything counts. Exactly.
So, Chad, one of the things when we talked about in our little pre-meeting before we come on, usually, for those that don't know, usually about between 9:30 and 10:30, usually closer to 10 every day. Chad and I will get on the phone. We'll talk about, what are we going to talk about today? We've got these guests. And I'm like, what goes on in the show? And very early in our conversation today was like, you know what? Let's make today the Jaylen Daniels show, if you will. We'll talk about him as an opponent. You know, I had a conversation with a KU source, KU expert on Tuesday about how he thought KU would use Daniels. And I think it makes for a really fascinating game of cat and mouse on Saturday, Chad, how they use Daniels, how Texas chooses from the very first snap to defend Daniels, and how effective either is against the other is probably one of the big stories of this game. I mean, if Daniels can't get on track on Saturday, then Texas almost certainly will blow KU out of the building. But he is, I think, on this schedule that Texas has, the remaining 8 games, he is the one quarterback. Forgive me, Dylan Gabriel, and all of your fantastic performances against average teams. Jaylen Daniels is the guy that if he caught lightning in a bottle on Saturday, he could make this thing really hard for Texas over 4 quarters. I don't think either you and I think that Texas is going to lose this game, but I think you and I both respect the hell out of Jaylen Daniels to the extent that we think Kansas is going to be competitive on Saturday. And what Texas does to defend him, I think, is the story of this game, because there really isn't another quarterback on the schedule that's like Jaylen Daniels. Sarkeesian was asked this question during the media availability today, Chad, and the closest thing that he could compare it to is Taylor Martinez from Kansas State. And it was like, those 2 guys aren't the same.
No.
They're not way better remotely the same, but that
way better.
There's nobody else that they've played that they can compare to. Gives you an idea of the uniqueness in defending him that he brings to the table on Saturday.
Yeah, I started throwing questions out and kind of previewing on Twitter and getting it out today. Just, is he the best they'll face? Is he the best they faced so far? Is he the best they're going to face in the regular season? And then if you want to extend it,
Adrian Martinez. What did I say? Taylor? I got Taylor Swift on the brain. Sorry.
Maybe that's it. But, is he the best the rest of the regular season? Is he the best in the Big 12? Is he the, so remember Big 12, preseason honors, it got a little confusing when the media looked at it and went, well, wait a second. He's the preseason offensive player of the year, but you're picking Kansas to finish 9th? Like, that felt a little weird. But in a way, Ketch, it speaks to his talent. That speaks to how good he is. And the media felt like they couldn't ignore him and that he is that dynamic. So things jump out to me about Daniels and this team, and we'll go through a lot of these today, but 76% completion percentage. It just keeps blinking at me. He's top 20 in passing efficiency, 76% throwing the ball. They convert 61% on 3rd down. Shout out to our producer, Blake, who pointed that stat out yesterday that I had just missed somehow. First in the country, converting 3rd downs at 61%. And then as you pointed out, Ketch, and looking and talking to some Kansas folks that you had, they've started to dial him up just slightly, but started to dial him up as a runner. He's got 27 carries, through 4 games. We can all do that math right around the 7 number, but in the last game it was 9. And the question's going to be, one of the big questions is going to be, do you get him into double digits in this game? What kind of designed runs do you have in this game? Is part of the Kansas plan to just start to unfurl him as a runner a little more in addition to what they do in the passing game? I can't wait to see it. This Texas defense is getting a test on Saturday. There's no doubt.
Well, the answer would appear to be yes. That, I watched a little bit of Kansas in both of the first 2 games that he came back, and they were really using him as more of a pocket presence kind of a quarterback. When he would get outside the pocket, he was running to set up the pass. So I talked to some KU people this week and asked them, what do we expect? Texas, when faced with a running threat quarterback on so far this season, you think back to the Jalen Hurts. God, where's my brain today? You go back to the game against Jalen Milroe when they played Alabama. They used Anthony Hill as the spy, if you will. And he did a really good job of kind of following him all over the field. And Milroe never really got on track as a run threat. He never busted off the 50-yard play that, didn't he have one of those against A&M where, he's contained and then he's not contained?
Yes. Yeah.
I think in talking to KU people this week, they think that they're going to try to use Daniels running the ball, and that there was the opening games of the season, there was a real sense that they were protecting him, not wanting to open up the possibility of taking a big hit, getting injured, because when he played against Texas last year, he was coming off of injury. And I think there was a sense that they were using, if there was a usage rate in college football, his would have been astronomically high last year. They're asking him to throw it all the time. They're asking him to be the ground game and to be the red zone threat. And at some point, his body just broke. This year, they're being more careful, but it sounds like all of that will go out the window on Saturday. They will try to get him on the front foot in the run game. I think they hope that he's a guy that's going to give them between 70 and 100 yards. That might be one of those stats that if there's a KU YouTube video show going on right now, simulcasting with us, covering it from the Kansas angle, I wonder if there's a magic number that they think he needs to get in the ground game. Might be a question to ask our third hour guest. Is there a magic run game number for Daniels to get to?
Yeah, either carries or yards. And by the way, somebody in the chat brought up a great point. He didn't play in the first game, correct? So when they played Missouri State, FCS team, he didn't play. So that makes the math even easier. 27 carries through 3 games. That's the 9. So 9 is the number, Ketch, that we'll watch in this game. If you are Lance Leipold right now, if I made you pick over or under, do you think he wants it? Do you think he wants to give Daniels that 10th carry for sure?
I think so. I mean, because if I told you coming out of let's just play a little pop quiz. Okay. It's not really a pop quiz because the answer is rhetorical in nature. But if I tell you that Daniels finishes the game between 15 and 20 carries, what does that tell you?
I mean, from looking at some of their numbers and what they've done so far, it better tell me that he's the next, that better be second to Neal. If that's the 3rd most carries, Texas is in deep trouble in that situation. If he's at 10 to 15, or you said 15 to 20, if he's at 15 to 20, if he's 15 to 20 and he's the 3rd leading carry guy, Texas is in a deep hole at that point. If he's the 2nd guy, I think Texas can deal with that part. And obviously it's about what he does on those runs. You're hoping if you're Texas, a lot of that is scramble. A lot of that is play breaks down, but you contain him. But I'd love to keep that number right where it's been. I would love to keep him in a single digit if I'm Texas on runs. But I'm with you. I think it's going to push like to 10, 12, maybe 10 to 15.
Well, and if it gets above that, to me, that would indicate that they're having success in the run game and he's a part of it. And, I don't know that I get to a point where I think Texas is ever in trouble in this game, but I think it's going to be very competitive. I think we'll get to halftime. I think you and I will be doing the watch along on Saturday. I think at halftime we'll be talking about a football game. And how Texas makes it not a football game will be interesting to see, I think, in the second half. Yeah. Can this defense come out from the jump and just dominate a really good Kansas offense? I don't know. Like this is the best opponent in that capacity that either team has faced. Kansas knows what they are on offense, and Jaylen Daniels is just better than Jalen Milroe. And when teams have a better quarterback, Milroe's the run threat. Milroe's a better run threat than Daniels is, but Daniels is light years ahead of him as a passer. And the fact that he's completing basically 75% of his passes this year, he's a national top 20 quarterback in terms of passing efficiency. And I don't think the pass game is the best part of their offense. I think he is, but I don't think they've got the wide receiver talent that they have at the running back position. I think their skill position area of potential NFL guys is at the running back position. If he had even one receiver of the quality that Quinn Ewers has, then I think this offense would really be cooking with grease. I think they really get by on his talent more so than the collective talent of that group. By the way, Chad, another super chat. I didn't see what it was from Cody. From my count, we have 9 starters on defense that will graduate declare for the NFL. Over and under 3.5 starters on the defense next year from the portal. I will take the less by a mile, by a lot. They're not going to go get 3 starters in the portal from the defensive side of the ball. I know they're going to want to go get a tight end. I know they're going to want to go get a wide receiver. I think you'll see them try to add some talent into the interior of that defense. One of my notes in the war room tonight, as a matter of fact, will deal with this topic. But, I think there's a good chance Sorrell comes back. They'll return all their edges. Linebacker is a question mark, maybe. But no, they'll be lucky if they get 3 starters out of the portal next year through both the offense and defense. I can't see them getting that much on the defensive side of the ball. They will at some point lean on the young guys they have in the program. A guy like Leona LaFowl may be one of the guys at linebacker that they asked to step up. I just don't see that many.
Cody, thank you so much for that super chat. We got other good chats coming in. Shout out to Specs for the chat line. Specs Wine, Spirits, and Finer Foods. SpecsOnline.com if you need to get stocked up for the game with all those good drinks and stuff that they've got. Ketch, if they're also stocking up for food this weekend, if they're going to watch along with you and me on Saturday afternoon, they may need, some grub for the weekend. Give them a little idea. Tell them about some shrimp, Ketch.
Make yourself a shrimp po' boy on Saturday. Why not? You can get it from Prime Shrimp right now. Go to the website, use that promo code Orangebloods30 and get a 30% off all orders of 6+ packs. You may be thinking to yourself, I don't know that I even want to order 6 packs of shrimp. Yes, you do. You want to order 6+ packs because you want to try all of the flavors. And then the ones you like, you want to make sure that you get more than one. You had Jason Sukumel on the show yesterday talking about, the Mojo Insurance and the fact that he's like our guinea pig for everything. He used Mojo Insurance before we did Mojo. He's used the hell out of some Prime Shrimp over the years. I've not had as much Prime Shrimp as he has. I think he's tried every flavor. And yeah, they got multiple flavors. Don't trust me. Go to the website. Again, use that promo code Orangebloods30. Use that QR code right now. Do it. Get yourself some shrimp for the weekend. Get yourself some shrimp for next weekend. Make sure at your next party, your next meal, your next whatever, you have that kind of optionality. Not just shrimp, but the best and your favorite of shrimp from Prime Shrimp.
Dude, I like it. You can tell specificity to suck it. You got optionality. That was good. Well done. Well done. Good comeback.
Don't ask me to say it twice.
No, I won't. That was a good comeback. We got some chats here on Kansas and Daniels. Michael says Daniels is really good. It might be a second half game, but our lines of scrimmage are just too dominating. We will run away with it by 2 to 3 touchdowns by the fourth quarter. And we also had this prediction coming in from David, 50-28. The 50 burger, the half a hundy. The prediction from David.
It would be nice to see that if you're a Texas fan, coach, player. I mean, the Longhorns haven't broken 40 yet this season.
Yeah.
And we thought that this would be an offense that did that with regularity, optionality. Just don't ask me to say that other word.
Come on. Some words are tough. There's some words that are just a little tough.
Especially when you've been using Rogue products earlier in the day. Like, ultimately, Rogue's good for a lot of things, but English may not be like the first one.
So what we heard earlier was some gelato specificity. Is that what you're telling me?
It was to be very specific. Yes.
Yes. That's exactly.
Indeed. Texas is going to win 50-28. I mean, it's funny is I'm not going to say no to most of these. Mm-hmm. It could go down like that.
Yeah.
I just know that it's going to take a different level of performance on Saturday against Kansas at home than we've seen in either of the 2 home games so far this season. And that's not to say that it's unlikely that will happen, Chad, or even likely. Like I can go in multiple directions with this game. I think the important thing is don't let Kansas and Jaylen Daniels get confidence early like you certainly let Wyoming get confidence early. Yeah, maybe Wright never quite had that, although defensively they kind of had their way with that Texas offensive line in the first half with 6 tackles for loss in the first half, and then Texas runs away with it in the third quarter. You know, I would like to see the Texas of a week ago, where by the end of the first quarter, it felt like it had taken Baylor's spirit and their football soul away from them. That's what I want to start seeing Texas do at home. They haven't done that yet. And Sarkeesian even said it on Monday, like maybe it's an us thing. Maybe we're not stressing certain things well enough during the week that's causing some of our players to, the pre-motion penalties and the things like that where the level of focus isn't as intense as it is on the road when your back's up against the wall a little bit. And that if you make the little mistakes, they can turn into big things, and big things keep other teams in games. They just haven't been that crisp on offense. And really, now that we're into game 5 of the season and game 3 at home, until we actually see it happen, I don't know that you can just assume that it's going to happen. So you and I think Texas wins the game. I think you and I may think this is a more difficult, hotly contested game for a little bit longer than maybe a lot of Texas fans do. I've got a final score 34-23 right now.
34-23. Okay. All right.
I got an 11-point win, so I've got Kansas covering.
Yeah.
Or winning with the points, Texas not covering. But I don't even know that necessarily means I think it's a 7-point game in the fourth quarter or anything like that. But I think this could be a game where Jaylen Daniels exits and everybody else in the Big 12 remembers, oh, that guy's still there and he's really good. Crap.
Right.
Kansas is on the schedule.
Yeah, that's the respect that I'm giving Kansas this week because I'm with you. I've been at a Kansas cover all week, and I think I'm working my way towards a 1-score game. I'm working my way towards Sark getting a win in a 1-score game. That's how close I think this is going to be. So I got like 38-30 Texas. I think this is going to be – because the other thing I don't know, I hope I'm wrong here. I think a lot of Texas fans just think this defense is going to walk into every game and pitch a 10 or less in every game. I'm just not certain of it yet. I'm not certain.
It's possible. This defense –
they look really good. I get it. But again, when you look at those rush defense numbers, I don't know if they're real because they haven't played anybody that can run. This team apparently can run. But as I've pointed out, their opponents have been garbage too. So we get to find out this week. I'm just not confident enough to say, oh, yeah, it's like 50-3 because Daniels is good. They run the ball. I think they're going to be successful doing that. And I think it's going to be a closer game than that. But then But we'll see. I hope Texas fans are right. I'd love to see a thrashing because it makes for a more fun watch along, and we don't have to stress out for it for Texas fans or whatever. But I think there's going to be some stress required. I think Kansas is going to get your respect by the end if you didn't have it. I think if this was OU, you'd respect them a ton more. If you change this uniform, I think Texas fans would change their mindset. I think the Kansas uniform is freaking them out and making them think, oh, we're just going to kick their ass because they're Kansas. They score a lot. They can score. They're good. Their quarterback's really good. Their quarterback might be better than your quarterback. I just don't think Texas fans can get that in their head this week. A lot of them are just riding high.
I also think it's important, though, my fear, maybe that's the wrong word. I have a bit of an apprehension there's part of me that thinks that this Texas defense might be historically good, that you look at the number of potential NFL players on it, you look at the experience on it, you look at the way they performed in the first 4 games, and I've been talking about them in 2009-ish terms that, I mentioned this past week, they're in, I think I counted 10, but it might actually be 11. They're in the national top 25 in 11 different categories on defense. I think one of the things that we might run into danger, though, is we'll go into this Kansas game, and if they dominate Kansas, we'll then render Kansas as a pretender. And that then they'll get into the Oklahoma game and we'll say, well, this is a test because Oklahoma, look at them statistically. But one of the things we'll say about Oklahoma next week is, are they a straw man? Is this really a team on both sides of the ball that's getting by based on the fact they haven't played anybody? And then if Texas crushes them defensively, we'll be through 6 games and maybe there'll be nobody on there won't have been an opponent where if Texas is dominant defensively, we'll then turn around and proclaim them as, well, that was still a really good offense. And so this Texas defense is for real. There's a little bit of apprehension in me that for the entire season, Texas might not play anybody, that when it's over with, we'll go, well, that's a real team with a real quarterback, because we'll look at Kansas and it's Jaylen Daniels, Devin Neal, and some guys. Oklahoma, I don't know. I mean, statistically, they're going to end up being the toughest test that Texas has had all season when you consider they're number 1 in the Big 12 on offense and defense as a team. But that's what the stats tell us. It's not what our eyeballs necessarily tell us. You think there's a world out there where we're halfway through the season and this Texas defense continues to do what it's doing, but we still say things like, well, we're waiting for that first true test for this defense. But there are only so many Michael Penixes and Caleb Williams out there in college football.
Right.
I mean,
I get you, but let me just ask it this way. If they are indeed Jaylen Daniels and Devin Neal and a bunch of guys, would you agree that they're Jaylen Daniels and Devin Neal and a bunch of guys that can beat Texas?
Beat? I don't know. I mean,
really? You don't think, I mean, it's that distinct to you that this is like 50-3 or it's 48-20. And it's just, there's no way if it's 10-0 Kansas at the half, you're completely shocked. That's impossible.
I would be really shocked if it's 10-0 Kansas at the half.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Just shocked for those, I mean, you tell me if these two teams played 10 times, you think Kansas wins how many times? In Austin, 10 times in Austin with the weather, everything's the same. How many times?
Because it's Austin, it goes to 8 or 9 out of 10.
I'm probably like at 9.5.
Yeah. I mean, that's absolutely what it should be.
So I don't know that. So would I be shocked if they won? Shock's not the right words. They have a wild card at quarterback that gives them a chance in any game they play. But no, the rest of this team doesn't match up with this Texas team. This Texas team that went on the road and outclassed Alabama in Tuscaloosa over 4 quarters. An Alabama team that 2 weeks later takes a very good Ole Miss team to the woodshed. Now, I don't think Ole Miss is great.
Yeah.
they're at least pretty good.
Yeah.
And Alabama made them look like stepchildren.
Yeah, I mean that I wouldn't go quite that far on that game. It was ugly for a while, and then they pulled away. I didn't think they dominated every second of that ball game.
Ole Miss was never going to break 10 against that defense the way they played. Right. So, and to that point, it would have taken some Jalen Milroe mistakes for that to, I think, turn into a fourth quarter game that Alabama fans are like, oh my God.
Yeah, that's true.
The wild card in all of this is they're really good at quarterback, but so is Texas. How does Texas blow out Kansas? Maybe you have an uncharacteristically dangerous game where Daniels turns it over 2 or 3 times, and then the floodgates could open up. I mean, Texas did blow out Kansas a year ago. They did have Jaylen Daniels, but it was a Jaylen Daniels coming off of injury, not in any kind of a flow. And honestly, Texas made that game about everybody else other than Jaylen Daniels. And if they can do that this weekend, they should blow this Kansas team out. If it's Jaylen Daniels and nobody else is going to help him, well, then there you go. I wonder, though, if you're asking me what keeps Kansas in the game in the fourth quarter, Quinn Ewers not having a great game is the best way for that to happen.
Right.
Because Kansas does stop the run.
Yeah. And looking back at that game a couple years ago, this obviously isn't Ewers, but a couple years ago, -4 in the turnovers. I'd forgotten it was that bad. Kansas had none. Texas had 4. So that obviously ends up being a big part of it.
That's enough to make you choke on some ice cubes.
No, it is. You just can't, obviously, you can't be sloppy like that at home. That's how you let somebody come in and mess with you. Also, Ketch, I'll keep talking about this number throughout the week. I thought this was interesting. Kansas is averaging 218 yards per game. That's how you get to 12 in the country right now. Back in 2021, they ran 43 times for 218 yards exactly, 5.1 a carry, and they kept the ball for 35 minutes. This year, they are just outside the top 10, 11 in the country in time of possession, a little over 33 minutes. I'm always talking about that
game, Chad.
I always talk about that stat. Sometimes it doesn't matter, but remember Wyoming. Wyoming had 39 minutes of time of possession. Ended up not mattering in the end, but Kansas wants to do that exact thing. They convert like crazy on third down. They want to run the ball. They want to take time away from you. So that is one of the stats I would say we got to watch in this game. How much Kansas just flat keeps the ball away from Texas. They're going to try to do that just like they did in 2021.
No, I'm glad you brought it up. I was going to mention this has Wyoming written all over it, where they're going to want to use the new rules to their advantage. They're going to want to shorten the game. They're going to want their drives. Sarkeesian wants to throw deep. He wants to be big plays. He wants to be explosive. And he tells us that all the time. Like his vision of this team is in his own desires of who he wants to be as a coach. And I think you're going to see Lance Leipold come in this weekend with Kansas, and they're going to want a 10 and 11 play drives that take up 8 minutes off the clock. And they're going to want to get to the 7-minute mark in the fourth quarter, and it be 24-20 either way.
Yeah.
And give us a chance with 7 minutes to go to be a score away from taking the lead or expanding the lead or whatever. And I think that Texas is going to want to play this game like a basketball game. They want to be the Showtime Lakers.
Right. They got to go.
I think, if you will use the basketball analogy, I think Kansas will want to be like the 89-90 Pistons with Jaylen Daniels being there as Zeke Thomas.
Yeah. No, I like that comparison. Remember the games Texas has gotten themselves into in Manhattan in the past, where you get to the end of the first quarter and go, wait a minute, how many drives has Texas had? Is it just one? That's the kind of game Leipold would love to put on them Saturday afternoon.
And creating turnovers, when you think about last year in Manhattan, how they ended up winning that game and creating a little bit of separation. Can Jaylen Ford get another interception? Can this defense attack? How aggressive they come after Daniels, even with a spy if they're using Anthony Hill to be the spy again. You know, because this Texas defensive line likes to get up the field. And how they do that this week, knowing that if they over pursue, that Daniels is a guy that he's just so good. Texas fans saw the game 2 years ago, and I think they just think fluke. And then last year, they didn't get the real Jaylen Daniels. They got the Jaylen Daniels coming off of an injury, no momentum at all. It was just bad timing. Mm-hmm. I don't think Texas fans in their minds, when I sing his praises, I think Texas fans think I'm singing his praises at the expense of Quinn Ewers, or, there's always, I think they think an angle, as opposed to, I just think this guy's really freaking good. He's got a cannon for an arm. He can make plays with his feet. He's got a good football brain on his body. Like, he just checks a lot of boxes. And I think the game from 2 years ago was so unexpected that I don't even realize, if I told you going into that game everything about Daniels that I'm telling you now, then you would have watched that game from 2 years ago completely different. You would have thought to yourself, well, Ketch said this guy was a great quarterback, and that great quarterbacks can do these types of things. And you'd look back on 2 years ago and go, we got done in by a great quarterback. Yeah. And because nobody knew his name before that game started, the memory of that game is such that it's almost like a whirlwind for Texas fans.
But it's also the impossibility of a Kansas football player beating Texas.
Right.
Like that, Texas fans, and I get it, you're programmed a certain way. We all are, where that, the uniform part of that matters in a way. If he was wearing another uniform in 2021 and they walked in and scored 57 and Texas was sloppy and it went overtime, then it's one of the stories of the country if he left in a different uniform, but it was Kansas. So it's an extra layer of embarrassment for Texas fans. I
don't even think that was possible, because 2 years ago, Jaylen Daniels was so unknown. Had he been known, it wouldn't have been embarrassing. That's what I told Texas people last year, which was, guys, as it turns out, that Daniels guy.
Yeah.
Because you know what people did when the Kansas game from 2 years ago ended? People would say things like, if that guy showed up for Kansas every week, they'd be better than 1-11 or whatever the case may be. It turns out, yes, you're right. And he
did.
He does.
Because he's really good. But it's like, think about it. In the time you've been covering Texas, has there been a Kansas team that if they beat Texas, it's not embarrassing for Texas?
No. But you know who he most reminds me of from a performance standpoint? You got to go back 30 years. But Texas went on the road at Pittsburgh in 93 or 94. Might have been 94. And this running back for Pittsburgh ran for like 250 and kept Pittsburgh in the game. Again, that Texas wins 30-28.
Right.
Everybody was like, Jesus, Texas is a joke. Defensively, they can't stop the run. Who is this guy from Pittsburgh? Why can't we stop him? Is this what this season is going to be like? We're not going to be able to stop Pittsburgh and they're going to run all over us. And then, like, all these years later, it's like, that dude's name was Curtis Martin. It was the first time anybody had ever seen him play like in college football. And it turns out he's an NFL Hall of Famer. I don't know that I necessarily think all of that about Jaylen Daniels, but it is similar. When the first performance happens, rather than just saying that guy's like a god in cleats, it's like something had to be wrong with us.
Right. So by the way, Ketch, real quick, on the other side of the house divided, is that like when my Aggies got embarrassed when a Pitt receiver caught 3 touchdowns at Kyle Field and then later on he became Larry Fitzgerald?
A little bit, but everybody knew that Fitzgerald was an All-American.
I guess that's true.
College receiver at the time. This was an instance where, like, this was literally their first game.
It was the coming out party.
And if I remember correctly about that Curtis Martin performance, he had been injured the year before, and so nobody had seen him. So when he shows up and runs for like 250, it's like, why is this happening? Surely Pittsburgh, this guy's not going to be I'll never forget, Chad. I had my fantasy football draft that year, the day of the Texas Pitt game. I think it was in 94. And I had to do the draft by phone. I was working at Burt's Barbecue. Had to work at Burt's that day. So we're watching the game there. And I'll never forget like calling in my pick and joking, with the 8th pick, I'll take Curtis Martin, running back, Pittsburgh. And everybody kind of laughed and joked about it. And as fate would have it, he ended up being just really, really good. And I think that's kind of who Daniels is. When it first happened, the mindset coming out of that game was how embarrassing. But I don't think 2 years later, losing to Kansas in the shootout fashion that they did, considering that was the first game he'd started at quarterback. And coming out of it was like, no way that guy's going to be that good all the time. And in reality, yeah, actually, that's who he is. He's really, really good. And you said it earlier, and I don't want people to flip out when we say this. He might be better right now than Quinn Ewers is. They're different guys. They're hard guys to compare against. But if I told you, take Jaylen Daniels and put him on this Texas team and let him have Xavier Worthy, Adonai Mitchell, Jatavion Sanders, Jordan Whittington, that offensive line, if you gave him all of that, would he be good?
Yeah.
If you took Quinn Ewers and put him on that Kansas team, and I told you he doesn't have any receivers that you're scared of, he doesn't have a tight end, the offensive line's not as good. They can run the ball. They do that really well, but there's nobody that's going to take a short hitch 44 yards for a touchdown like Xavier Worthy did against Wyoming. I think one guy's better than the other if you switch spots. Now, I would love from now through the rest of the season for Quinn Ewers to play at such an exceptionally high level that feels in 8 games like the stupidest thing I've ever said.
Yeah.
But right now it feels real.
Absolutely. By the way, if anybody knows Texas players and can get messages to them, please tell Quinn Ewers that the discussion is out there that Daniels is better than him. And please, somebody tell the Texas defense that I think they're going to get 30 hung on them this week, so I can be wrong. Please.
Do you think they're really going to get 30 hung on them?
I do. I think it's going to be a close high. I've just been asking myself, can they really hold them down to the – I mean, we had this is a great chat, and if this person sees what they want, this is big time. Craig, talking about the points that Texas has scored at home and on the road, what they've given up, and it ends with, if we give up 10 this week, I'm stoked. Craig, I'd be stoked too if you give up 10. I've got more respect for what Kansas does on offense, and like I said, I've got to see it develop a little bit with this Texas defense. I'm not saying they haven't been great, but I just don't think they've faced anything offensive that is as put together as what Kansas is going to bring them. So I do think it's a battle. I think this is a battle. I think there's a little bit of a truth serum coming here, but this is the kind of game you're going to have to win from time to time. You're going to have to win a fight. And I think this is a fight. I think it is a little bit high scoring. I think they're going to need 30-31 to get it. So 38-30 is the score that's been in my – I was at 35-24 earlier in the week, but I'm going to crank both scores up a little bit.
For you.
Yeah, it's getting a little closer. I think this is going to be a battle. And I think it's I think they force some field goals, which ends up being the difference. They end up with touchdowns in big spots. And I think it may be maybe it's 38-23 late and Kansas scores, or maybe it's a 31-30 and Texas stretches it out. But I think it's tight, and we'll see. Again, I hope I'm wrong. I'm wrong because it'll really be a great indicator for OU. But I think these next 2 games are tests for Texas, and it's a chance for Sark to prove he can win close games.
By the way, I do think I don't see Kansas score. It's funny because the chat in our studio is not working. It stopped working, Chad.
Okay.
I have a YouTube browser up over here, so I'm seeing the live chats on YouTube come in.
Okay.
And people think we're basically saying Texas shouldn't show up.
Yeah.
They've gone, they're taking this so far as to think that, God, how's anybody ever beat Kansas? Guys, it's not like that. We're not hyping up Kansas as anything more than they are. but they're a good football team. They're a good football team with better quarterback play than anything that Texas has seen all season. If you took Jaylen Daniels and put him on Wyoming 2 weeks ago, what happens in that game? What happens in a 10-10 game in the fourth quarter if instead of the backup quarterback, they play somebody of Daniels' talent level? I don't know. I actually don't have an answer for what that actually means in reality, other than to say it was a 10-10 game in the fourth quarter with a guy who's 10% of Jaylen Daniels. So, no, I think you're wrong, Chad, about them scoring 30. I think Texas wins this game similarly to the way they won against Wyoming and Rice, in that in the third quarter, we start to see separation. And in the fourth quarter, Texas has a double-digit lead. But I don't think Kansas ever goes away. I think it could be one of those games where Texas gets the lead to 14, but then Kansas scores and it's back to 7. Mm-hmm. And then Texas kicks a field goal. And then Kansas, I think there could be some back and forth. I think the only worry I have for Texas is that if Kansas is actually able to make this a shorter game with fewer possessions. Baylor had 9 possessions in the first half on Saturday against Texas. Mm-hmm. And 6 of those drives went 4 plays or less, but they had 9 drives. You're not going to see that this week. Kansas is going to have fewer drives. There are going to be fewer plays. And that means consequently that Texas is going to have their hands on the ball fewer times. So it makes it harder, I think, for Texas to get into the 40s and 50s if you have so few possessions. You think back to that Wyoming game, Texas didn't have the ball hardly at all in the third quarter, didn't have it a whole lot in the second quarter. And that's partly what led to the kind of game that played out. Kansas is capable of doing that. But I actually –
and again,
you're in line with, I think, where the chat is. But
you're 1 score less than that, right? You're at 23 for Kansas. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
35-23. Right.
34-23 is what I've said. By the way, why don't you go ahead and put the super chats up for us, Blake? I see that Buck Wild says Kansas not played a defense with a player that would start at Texas. Probably, but that's not the way college football's always played. Look, if Texas comes out this week and does to Kansas what it did to Baylor, then believe me, Chad and I will sing the praises of that Texas team in the watch-along. We just can't pretend that over the course of the first 4 games that every game has been a walk in the park.
Yeah.
Tom G says, does the winner of this game, assuming good quarterback play, win the Big 12 Player of the Year and first-team All-Big 12 quarterback? Good question, Tom.
I definitely in the lead coming out of Saturday, I would say. Yes.
I don't think they lock it up. I don't think it's cemented.
Yeah.
Because I think next week's game, look, when Texas beats Kansas, right? Not if, when they beat Kansas. By the way, you guys can't get mad at me and say that, why should we? I literally said earlier that I think if these 2 teams played 10 times, Texas would win 9.5. Which means if they played 100 times, I would think they'd win 95. I think Texas is clearly better. I think it would take a monumental effort for Kansas to get the W on Saturday, but they're not incapable of doing that. Tom, I would just say yes, but next week's game, assuming Texas beats Kansas, this game will be put in the rearview mirror very quickly because then it will be number 3 Texas against number 12 or 13-ish Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. And then the winner of that game, assuming Texas wins this weekend, that discussion of what you just asked, I think, moves over to Dylan Gabriel and Quinn Ewers.
All right. Thanks to almost 330 folks in the Specs chat right now. We got super chats coming in, even though we have a weird way of grabbing it. We're going to try to grab them here. We are over the 1 o'clock hour. We'll get to buy or sell. Another super chat. James, $5. You're giving Kansas too much respect. They've played no one. UT is number 3 for a reason. The 2 recent UT losses to Kansas were 5 and 7 UT teams. All fair. It's also fair, James, to point out, other than Bama, who's Texas played? Who they played at home? How'd they look at home? It was 10-10 at the end of the third quarter against Wyoming's backup quarterback.
And that was 12 days ago.
That wasn't that long ago. It happened. I am not
I also think, Chad, like, you can't say the two recent teams that UT lost to, Kansas, were 5-7 UT teams, without pointing out that one of those games happened less than 2 years ago, and by the coach and the quarterback and a lot of the guys, that team is still the same. Now, I'm not arguing too much, but put some respect on Kansas in that it's not like Rice, where it's like, boy, these two teams have played, and not since 1994 has Rice won the game. This just happened 2 years ago in Austin. Jay Lee says, before you see what happens this weekend, if OU was playing Kansas this weekend, what would be good question? What would be your prediction for each team?
For each team. If OU was playing at Kansas this weekend, Kansas could absolutely win that game. I think it'd be a close game.
If it was at Kansas,
I
think I would probably be saying a lot of the same things that I'm saying about this weekend, which is, if you're Oklahoma, nothing that you've done to a certain extent matters as much as what happens now, because you're playing the best quarterback you played all season. You're playing a team that has the capability to give you a scare. I think that's who Kansas is.
Yeah.
I think Kansas is a team that can give you a scare. But clearly, I think Kansas is a team that loses to Texas 9+ times out of 10 if they play this game in Austin, these two teams. But that's a separate question than if I say, Chad, these two teams played 10 times in Austin. You said you thought Texas would win 8 or 9 times.
Yeah.
If they played 10 times in Austin, how many of these games would be competitive into the second half?
Still all 10 games in Austin?
Yes.
Competitive into the second half, like 7 or 8?
Exactly.
I mean, I think it's a ball game. I think it's a ball game Texas is going to win, and I think Texas fans are going to be happy by the end of it, but I think they're going to have to work a little bit. I think 3 out of 10 times Texas beats them 55-14, right?
Yeah. But in the other 7 games, we're midway through the third quarter, and nobody's gone like across the street to grab a beer at the foundation. Right. I'm just going to watch the rest of the game over there and drink.
No, it's a ball game. These aren't the Kansas teams that Ricky was running all up and down the field against. It's just not.
Texas Boy 999 says, you don't think it's stupid to run him that, knowing Catalan and Derek Williams just waiting to knock his head off? You don't think there's too much reason left to put your quarterback in jeopardy that many times?
I mean, they've run him 9 times a game so far. So that's, again, the number I'm watching. If you're right, Texas Boy, it'll be less than 9, and that could be good news for Texas. But, yeah, I got a feeling that they want to get him into that double-digit carry mark. But also understand they got 2 running backs that have run the ball more than him. Neal runs the ball. Highshaw has run the ball pretty well also. 218 yards a game. I mean, they want to run as a team, not just him. As a team, they want to run. He has not been a huge part of it so far, but it's 9 carries a game, and let's just watch where that number is.
And Texas Boy, to be fair, Jalen Catalan and Derek Williams aren't better football players than Jaylen Daniels. I mean, let's not go too homer where Jalen Catalan's made 1 big downhill tackle this season in 4 games against Baylor, and now he's He-Man. And Derek Williams, who's just started. I mean, yes, Texas has really good players, but Jaylen Daniels is really good.
Yeah. I mean, Ketch, see what Ketch, what you don't realize that Texas fans do is that when you put on a Kansas football helmet, your suck factor goes up like by a factor of 3. It's just impossible. You can't be a good football player and wear that helmet. It's impossible. You can't do it. Like, why are we even discussing this? It's going to be 52-3. Like, we're just stupid for having this conversation. Come on.
We got to do buy or sell because we got Brian Jones coming up in 10 minutes. So let's knock this out.
Yes, and I have 2 birthday-related buy or sells that I'm very proud of. Do I go first or second?
I'll go first today.
Hit it.
Buy or sell number 1. Hold on. Let me just I think I got my questions, but I gave them to Blake. I just want to make sure that they match.
Oh, look at you.
He even gave me the thank you with the hands. Buy or sell number 1. Jaylen Daniels will throw for more than 200 yards and rush for more than 70 this weekend against the Longhorns.
Jaylen Daniels will throw for 200 plus and rush for 70 plus. Man, oh man. Yeah, I'll buy. If I got Kansas getting up to 30, it's probably going to take both those numbers. So yeah, buy.
I still can't believe you've got Kansas in the 30s. Oh, well.
Prize pick.
I just want to throw this up there. Prize Picks has Jaylen Daniels rushing yards at 24.5. So if you think he's going to run for 70,
wow,
over there and hammer
on that in the break.
Yeah, jump all over that one.
Buy or sell number 2. Ewers combines for more total yards passing and rushing than Jaylen Daniels this weekend.
Ooh, I like that one. Ewers combining for more total yards. As you said, 2, and that's 270. Plus you get the 5th. Carry the everything. Yeah, buy. I think that total number for Ewers will go above that 270 mark.
I think Ewers throws for over 300 this weekend. Just my sense of this.
I think so too, and I think he's going to need to.
Buy or sell number 3. A Phillies fan and his emotional support alligator named Wally were denied entry into the Phillies Pirates game last night rather. And you think that's total BS? Let the man and his alligator named Wally in the doors.
Sell. We got to have a society here, people. Bravo to the Phillies stadium. Their rule's interesting. It's just the dogs, and that's it for them. It's a trained seeing eye dog or support dog, and no other animals are allowed in. For the stadium, I like that. For airplanes, I add the cats in. But other than cats and dogs, we have got to stop. Like the line must be drawn there. And I don't know why anything else is allowed on airplanes. Certainly, you shouldn't have anything in a stadium other than the highly trained dogs. Well done, Philly.
How would you react if you were on an airplane and someone had an emotional support alligator with them on the plane, like next to you in your row?
Oh my God, I don't know. That's a good question. I would begin to interview the person on how they got on this plane and why they think that is a relevant thing to do. Like, we'd really have to have a conversation at that point. You can't have an emotional support animal that does not show emotions towards you. That's silly. I
don't know. I saw pictures of Wally with his owner, and like Wally was giving him a hug.
It's just dumb.
I tell you what, I'll give Blake a picture of Wally. We'll see if that changes your mind when you see how much love that alligator has for its owner.
A doe-eyed alligator is not changing my mind. It's still an alligator. A sweet alligator is still an alligator.
I can't believe the Phillies, if there was ever going to be a team that would let an emotional alligator into the stands, it would be Phillies. So apparently there's nobody in baseball is going to let that alligator in if the Phillies won't.
Yep. Bravo, Phillies. Make a stand.
4, the Milwaukee Bucks with Dame Lillard make the NBA Finals easily over the Celtics, Sixers, Heat, and everything else in the East. Look at that little love dove. Look at Wally.
There's only one thought on that alligator's mind right now. One of these days, he's going to stop moving, and I'm going to rip his ear off. That is the only thing going through Wally's head right now. Bucks win. I'm going to sell. I'm going to sell because you put the word easily in there. I'll give the rest of the East a little respect and say it's not going to be a complete cakewalk. So I'll sell.
Colorado's buy or sell number 5. Colorado's Travis Hunter went bowling with Colorado State's Henry Blackburn. And that makes you like Travis Hunter twice as much as before.
Wait a minute. Is that the dude that hit him?
Yes.
Wow. They went bowling together. Did he wear the giraffe pajamas?
I don't think he wore the giraffe onesie, but they did go bowling together.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, bye. Absolutely. These players understand each other in a way that the regular folks like us probably don't. Everybody likes to just put their colors on and scream and yell. I love it. Travis Hunter and the way he's dealt with this whole situation, the messages to Dion, the stuff in the onesie, the gaming, all that. And then this, yes, I love him even more. And I really hope Colorado can at least cover against USC. I'd love to see them make that a ball game this week. All
By
right.
the way,
Yep.
Keenan Womack from Orangebloods had a tweet earlier that said, wow, Travis Hunter looks at videos of people having sex. Unbelievable, disgusting. I'm going to throw up. Does that mean that Travis Hunter likes to watch porn?
Like, is that all that's being discussed?
I don't know. I've done searches. I have no idea what he's talking about.
You think, just a weird side buy or sell. Buy or sell. Travis Hunter would watch a porn that involves Tyreek Hill. You hear Tyreek say he wants to be a porn star?
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Yeah,
I wasn't. Maybe buy? I don't know. Look.
He told my man Mike Evans he wants to be a porn star after his career, and Mike Evans did not know how to deal with it.
I saw that whole video exchange.
It was so good. So good.
And you do what you want to do, I guess.
Yeah. All right. We're halfway through buy or sell. Brian Jones of CBS Sports coming up at 1:20 to talk about Georgia, South Carolina, Auburn a little bit, but also Texas, obviously against Kansas. That's coming up. All right, Ketch. Buy or sell. Number one, Texas will beat Kansas, but Devin Neal will have more rushing yards than Jonathan Brooks.
Oh.
So far on the season, he does have more carries and more yards.
I'm going to say sell. I'm going to say Brooks outrushes him. I believe in this Texas defense. I don't think it's the run game by the running backs where they have any issues this weekend.
Gotcha. All right, buy or sell. Number two, today is Steve Largent's birthday, and you can tell me where he went to college.
Oh, I feel like I would have known this answer 10 years ago. Bye. Did he go to Gonzaga?
Oh, he did not. Same school as our man Drew Pearson, Tulsa.
Oh, wow. Okay. I thought for some reason he was from Washington State. Clearly not.
Yeah, weird that he ended up all the way up and was drafted by the Oilers. I forgot that story. Drafted by the Oilers. Bum Phillips got rid of him and sent him to expansion Seattle. I'd forgotten that story. All right, buy or sell number three, Ketch. Dame Lillard to Milwaukee. I'll go a little lighter than you did. Milwaukee makes the Eastern Conference Finals guaranteed.
Well, that's the same question I asked you.
No, it's not. You said easily wins the NBA Finals. That's a different discussion.
That's not what I said.
Yeah, you did.
Put the question back up.
You said
Bucks with Dame Lillard make
my bad.
NBA Finals.
Make the NBA Finals easily. All right, that's fair. You're right. No, but I'm saying guaranteed make the Eastern Conference Finals. One step below.
I'll take the field, and I'll also take, Dame's in his 30s.
Okay.
We could see an injury. There's a lot of things that could happen. The Celtics are – I don't put my Sixers up there, but the Celtics are really good. Guaranteed? No, sell. Too many things can happen. But, as of this moment, do I like the Bucks to make the Eastern Conference Finals? Yeah, I do.
All right, fair enough. All right, Ketch, buy or sell number four. Let's test your childhood out. Today would have been Jerry Clower's 97th birthday, RIP. You know who Jerry Clower is.
Sell. I have no idea who that dude is.
All right, fair enough. Just means you weren't raised quite as country as some people were. If you're a certain age and you're a certain amount of country, you know who Jerry Clower is. He would have been 97 today. A Southern comedian from Mississippi from way back in the day. Got famous for traveling around and talking about raccoon hunting stories and all kinds of crazy stuff.
No, man, you're a little bit more country than I am.
He was my granddad's favorite. Rest in peace to Jerry Clower. All right, and finally, Ketch, buy or sell number five. If the Mountain West adds Washington and Oregon State and calls itself the Pac-14, you're okay with them getting Power 5 status?
Buy.
Okay.
Because starting next year, we're in a 12-team playoff. If they're not given that, the amount of crap that, I don't want them to be a pain in the ass.
Okay.
And if they're judged less than Power 5, then there will be people all year long. That's all they'll want to talk about. You know what? In a 12-team playoff, throw that conference a bone. Let the winner have an automatic qualifier. I'd rather just not have to deal with the ache and the pains of them being left out and us having to constantly hear this discussion of, well, look at how good they are. They played a Power 5 team. I mean, I feel like we've seen that conversation before. I'm done with that. It's 12 teams.
Okay.
Let the conference champion in. Let's get 6 more teams at large, and let's just get after it.
By the way, Ketch, if you're right, imagine the windfall for teams like Wyoming, San Jose State, San Diego State, and these teams that are in the Mountain West now. They'll go from getting 20% of the CFP revenue to 80% of the CFP revenue. Like that. For having a relationship with Washington State and Oregon State.
Well, then maybe I wouldn't.
I'm just saying that could happen. Lots of weird CFP stuff to be decided for next year. All right, there's your buy or sell for this Thursday. If it's Thursday and it's about this time, it means it is time for us to have one of our favorite conversations of the week. Although now I look down and I see, did he freeze up? No, wait, no. He's adjusting something. He's technologically adjusting. Ladies and gentlemen, we are apparently interviewing Brian Jones' arm. Brian Jones' left arm is joining us.
Hey, look, it's Dave Aranda back.
Wait. Now, Brian Jones, CBS Sports. I just saw you like in a, the wide shot or whatever. What are you doing?
Dude, my barber, who also is my electrician, who's my computer tech. He's Jamaican too, and he has about 20 jobs. He hooked up this office, man, and I don't know how to work any of this stuff.
Wow.
I'm trying.
Wow. Okay.
At least we're not frozen, and we have video. So talk to the arm, baby. Talk to the arm.
Talk to the arm. Brian Jones looking in good shape as always. So, one of the most unique position interviews that we have every week is Brian Jones. Check out the books and a partial helmet. And
I guess I'm so confused.
I guess we'll just power through. Hey, Brian. So
I'm working on it as we talk. This thing, it's got a mind of its own. It was a huge wide shot.
Yeah, I saw the wide shot. Is there no way for you to just kind of tilt or turn, or not you, but I mean, I don't want to make you do that the whole time. Your neck will be spasming by the end of it. I don't want that.
Is there workers' comp associated with this interview?
Dude, I know you've done yoga. And I know you keep yourself in shape, but I don't want to challenge that shape. Good grief.
He rigged this thing where you have to shoot. What's the first question, dang it?
Clearly the wife is home today because this situation is not making Brian curse.
Yeah, that's true. I was going to say, do you just want to get the cursing out of the way on this right now? That's my first question.
Come on, freaking computer and webcam and whatever, Logitech and God, I got a sexy setup. I just don't know how to operate it all the time. And this webcam.
That's the way that goes, isn't it?
Yeah. It just trips. Sometimes I can get it cooperate. Sometimes I can't. All right.
Yeah, it's just a shame. It's like life. In fact, right now, can everybody see what I'm seeing? It looks like Jeff Ketchum has Brian's torso.
It does.
like it looks like Ketch has Brian. I mean, give me a flex there, Brian, because it looks like Ketch has been working out.
Yeah, baby.
Way to go, Ketch.
I'm gonna put this on OnlyFans later. We'll see how much money we make.
I want my cut, Ketch.
You'll get it 50-50.
That is fantastic. Hey, Brian, your Longhorns said goodbye to Baylor and Waco in style last week by whipping their ass pretty good. What'd you think of 38-6 while you're trying to figure this out?
It was dominant. I loved it. It was outstanding. Oh, I think I figured. Is this that work? Nope, that didn't work.
There's no way you figured this out while we're doing the show.
Dude, hey, I have a college degree from the University of Texas. Oh, that's
Hold on. Things going
As
blurry.
He's talking about fixing it, he's literally making it worse.
Now it's clear again.
I thought I thought it was a very impressive performance, a dominant performance. Some hiccups in the kicking game with muff punts and kickoffs. Other than that defense, you're right, Chad. This shit hurt. That defense, dude. Usually when I'm watching game tape of various teams and there's 80+ play, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a long one. I enjoyed every bit of their tape because even when they got late in that ball game, they threw some names in there that I didn't know, and I'm sure probably some of the Texas fans and daddies, it was still getting after it. So that was impressive, and I was thoroughly the fourth down stops at the goal line. You had an earlier fourth down stop. It was just great, man. It was. What I do now, Ketch?
Nothing. I'm literally laughing at just the absurdity of the entire situation.
I do something different every week, don't I? I'm sorry, guys.
It does change up the variety. I enjoy.
No, I don't like it. I'm logging out. I'm coming back. We can't do this. Bye.
Okay. He's gonna do a reset. We're gonna get a reset from Brian Jones. So we saw Brian. Then he was way off. Then it got blurry. You got to admit, though, Ketch, that Brian, you never knew that the Brian Jones torso could look so good on you. That's
I just
pretty
don't
good.
understand. Like, why couldn't he just take his camera and turn it slightly?
I don't know. Did he screw the camera to something? Like, is it bolted to like a table?
Like, watch this, Chad, as an example. Ooh, like you can move the camera.
I like that right before the month of Halloween, you're trying to scare everybody with camera tricks.
You like that?
Ooh. Yes, exactly. All right, we'll get Brian Jones on. Hey, remember, CBS, Georgia-Auburn is the 2:30 this week. Georgia going to Auburn at the same time Texas will play Kansas. So assuming Georgia handles their business there, maybe no reason to turn over there. But if you need it, they are on CBS, while Texas and Kansas are on ABC. Ketch, I definitely want to get Brian's thoughts on Texas and Kansas. I want to see how much he has checked out Daniels so far on film. I wonder how much he's watched. And does he think this could be a dangerous kind of game, a trap kind of game for Texas, or does he think it's going to be an easy win? He said he liked the defense. The confidence in this Texas defense, I think, is going to determine too how people could pick it. Because if that defense continues to be this dominant, then they handle everybody.
I'm just now looking at the comments in the chat.
Yes.
I don't think you can see them because you're just looking at there, but someone put hashtag Sandman wrote hashtag man boob, which it did look like Brian was on the verge of being able to cut diamonds.
Again, I wasn't noticing exactly.
How do you not? If that had been his foot, you would have noticed.
You noticed it about Jimbo Fisher during that Miami game. I didn't see it.
I can't help it, man. Whether it's a dude or a chick, if nipples are hard. Look, see, he's back.
Okay, all right. Hey, there he is. Now the problem is,
it's too wide, but dang.
Dude, we can see your whole house at the same time.
You like my horse?
That's fantastic. Okay, so Ketch, we now are back talking to Brian Jones. Jones.
Ask him about Jaylen Daniels.
Daniels. There we go. So I was just saying, Brian, while you were reconnecting, how much Jaylen Daniels have you had a chance to watch? And do you feel like this Kansas team can come to Austin and really give Texas a test?
Yeah, I've watched their entire BYU game from last week, and he's a stud. We've known that. He carried this team a year ago until he got hurt. Then they had a skid there where they started undefeated, lost 3 straight, I think won a game, and then lost 3 or 4 after that. Didn't win another game, including the bowl game. But he's a stud, big kid, can throw a good ball. He forces some things. He threw a pick in the BYU game, but he threw some other stellar passes in that game as well. And also, he's going to use his legs. They run that zone read, and he's pretty well equipped to do such. So they're going to come in and play tough. What really impressed me, their defense, man, they were getting after it. They had 3 turnovers. One was a pick 6. And those cornerbacks, they come up and they hit you. Those guys, they're very physical. That number 40 on the defensive line, he was a very physical player as well. So we know they're not going to waltz into Texas and be scared. I'm looking for Texas to do what they do, live up to their standard. They live up to their standard, don't have turnovers and things of that nature. They're going to be just fine in this ball game.
Brian, Chad and I have been talking about this game as one we think will be competitive into the third quarter even. And most of the people in the chat today have been shaming us with the mere thought that Kansas is going to hang in this game on any level whatsoever. Is this a game you think is competitive into the second half and then Texas separates with its quality? Like, what do you think the ebb and flow looks like for Saturday's game?
I don't think it's going to be as competitive as Wyoming. I'm with the people who've been chiming in against your comments. Listen, they're a good football team. They've got some explosive players. Neal at running back. Use him myriad ways. They're a dang good football team, but Texas is a better football team. And I think Texas should be able to eat up their offensive line. The way that D-line is playing, it's been just a joy to watch those guys hunt, no matter who's up there, 88, 45, 93, 90, 95, whomever they're putting in there. Binkley last week got a sack and some more pressures. Whoever that's playing there, they have a standard that I'm seeing each week. Other than that big, long touchdown run by the Wyoming running back, these guys are hunting, man, and you love it. And they're keeping them fresh. So everyone's getting a chance to eat. And when you get in there, you better do something with it. Bush off the edge this past week. I think he may have had the first sack in the ball game, 43. And we talked about Burke, a number of times. So whomever's on that D-line, man, they're hunting. Benda had a good game as well. So I think this Texas defense can overwhelm Kansas. But if the offense doesn't have any mistakes, that'll go a long way with knocking this team off with ease. But you got to go in and respect them. This is a different Kansas team. Dorothy ain't in Kansas anymore, baby. So go in there and respect them. But I like Texas's chances. What's the line on this one? 17?
17.
Yeah. I can see that happening. If they take care of business, and Ewers, he got off the bus the other night. He was on point right from the get-go in the passing game. Look at all those different weapons. Sanders had a huge game. This Brooks kid, man, you talk about being sneaky fast. This dude, I love, sees that hole. He has a burst to it. He's tough to bring down. That first touchdown run, inside zone, he bounces to the outside, and he was gone. So he's got some speed you have to respect. You definitely have to respect his power. So I love what I'm seeing from this football team right now.
Brian, it's interesting you mentioned him. I was surprised to hear Sark say they clocked him up over 22 miles an hour on the GPS. He's not a guy that I think we've talked about in those terms, but I mean, that's serious stuff. We all know when you're up in that 20, 21, 22, that's like Tyreek Hill, stuff is one of the first guys I heard with that. So that is big. And that play was impressive. Like you said, to, get rid of that tackle that was coming, the one unblocked guy, and then he hits the corner. He was very, very impressive. I want to ask you, give me your kind of 1 to 10 trust level for this defense. I know they've been impressive so far. My only hesitation is not about them. It's kind of about the opponents so far. We've seen them dominate these opponents, but there hasn't been a badass quarterback to me. And there hasn't been a badass offense on the other side. I don't know if Kansas is badass, but I think they can come in and kind of do what they want to do. So I'm thinking Kansas can actually score some points. So for you, are you up at like a 9 or a 10 on trust level for this defense that they can squelch anything they face and they're not allowing, they're going to go allow 17 or less in all games?
I'm at 1 out of 10. That's the scale. I'm going to say my trust level, I'm with you at 8. You're right. They haven't played a quarterback such as the one they face in practice all the time. So they do get to see that type of play. a guy who's a pocket passer can stand back there and pick you apart with explosive receivers. So they're going up against quality, even above average and above quality talent in practice. And that's what we used to say about Bama all the time. These guys, iron sharpens iron. And their practices are harder than the game. And I hope that's what's occurring there in Austin as well. And when you have that type of talent, you get in the game like you're a poo butt compared to what I have to deal with, Monday through Friday or Monday through Thursday. You're nothing. So hopefully that's the phenomenon that exists there. But yeah, there's going to come a chance when a time when a quarterback can get in there and be pinpoint pass. Hell, that's Sabota for Wyoming. That dude was throwing the ball right where it needed to be. You had guys that were covered, and he was still fitting it in, as the good ones do. So they face a semblance of that, but down the road, those moments will come. But they're not going to be afraid. They won't wilt because hey, here's a guy who's got a high completion percentage and maybe stellar wide receivers that we now got to cover up. They have the dudes that can not take advantage, but that will not be afraid and can cover those type of receivers. Look who they face in practice. Hell. They've been dealing with Worthy for 3 years. Now you got Mitchell over there, and you got Sanders on the tight end. So they know what the elite guys, how they look at and how they move.
Yeah. Brian, Sarkeesian made a point earlier in the week to say that he didn't sense that anybody in the locker room was looking ahead to Oklahoma. There wasn't a moment where he had to correct guys and say, "Hey, we got a game this week." They seem dialed in. When you played, was that ever an issue? Was the week before Oklahoma, when the last opponent before Oklahoma, did you ever feel like there was focus issues either before or after that game because it's such a unique game? Or does it really come down to the maturity of the team, the quality of the team? And if it's high, then those things don't tend to matter as much.
No, we were not high. No. That never reared its ugly head. My junior year, we weren't a great football team, but I think we beat Arkansas prior to the OU game. So we'd gone on the road and knocked Arkansas off. We weren't picked to win that ball game. So how could you think ahead? Because Arkansas, I believe they were the reigning conference champs or had one of the top teams definitely in the conference at that time. So no, we weren't looking past them, knowing you had Oklahoma on the horizon. And definitely my senior year, let's just take care of business. We'd already lost the game, unfortunately, to Colorado. So no way we were going to look ahead to the Oklahoma game, knowing we already had a blemish on the schedule. And you're correct, Ketch. It's the maturity of the team. It's the leadership of the team and understanding you hadn't accomplished anything yet. And, hey, that game's going to get here. And you hear coaches say it all the time, along with other cliches, but you can only play one of them at a time, man. It ain't baseball. We ain't playing two today. So you just have to stay focused on that. And with an opponent such as Kansas, that the last time they were there, they beat you, that could keep your attention. You'll be just fine. And Oklahoma get here soon enough. You just take care of your business and make sure you continue to be unblemished when you face them.
By the way, Brian, don't throw ideas out like that. Roger Goodell's going to try to make NFL teams play 2 games in a day. Don't throw that idea in London.
He would put that on him, wouldn't he?
Yeah, he would. He would try to do that. We're talking with Brian Jones of CBS Sports. Brian, I mentioned earlier, you guys have Georgia at Auburn, one of my favorite SEC games, the oldest SEC rivalry in the South. I love it. I don't know if Auburn's going to bring much to it. That's the CBS 230. Let me ask the question this way. Eyeball test. I love that you're always honest about it. You'll tell us what you've seen. I think Ketch said this week, if he had a vote, Washington would be his number one team if everything else was just what you've seen. So through 4 weeks, what have your eyeballs told you? Who's your best team? Does somebody really stand out to you that would get your number one vote?
Well, I said it should have been FSU, Florida State. Definitely after beating LSU last week, of course, went to overtime, but they found a way to win that game. That's what championship teams do. But I'm with Ketch. I think Washington right now, man, the way Penix is spinning it. And you look at these quarterbacks. We do our little Heisman list every so often on Tuesday. We had it again a segment for it again this past week. And all three of my guys and pretty much everybody's was from the West Coast. You got Penix, you got Williams, and you have I knew I was going to forget it. Who's my other guy out there? Who's spinning it? Come on, you guys know.
Nix. Bo Nix?
Bo Nix. No, I didn't have Bo Nix, did I? Oh, it's another one.
Who are you talking about?
Oh, Cam Ward. I'm sorry, Cam Ward.
Okay.
Cam Ward at Washington State from SA, man.
Yeah.
Incarnate Word.
What about Tyler Van Dyke from Miami?
Well, I like Tyler, but we've only seen that A&M game when they get some stiffer competition. Let's see what he does. I've been a fan of his for a couple of years, but
different competition.
Chad, it is called the Deep South oldest rivalry.
That's what it is.
Rivalry. Georgia's looked apart here late, especially last week, man. They got Bowers back involved. Carson Beck looks pretty good. So I watched the A&M Auburn tape. And first of all, Jimbo, get your old ass off the field before you get stampeded. But he was smart. Did you notice he just stood there? He made them adjust. He made them, because if he tried, he would have been bowled over, man.
It looked like he'd done that before, Brian.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was so cool about it. He's like, I'm just going to be still. That was the trip. I'm watching. I was like, is he on the field? He was on the field. I was like, dude, you can't make it up. Auburn, offensively, their quarterbacks, Ashford, Thorne, who transferred from Michigan State, and Ashford transferred from Oregon a couple years ago. They couldn't hit a bull in the ass with a palm full of rice, man. They missed so many shots last week in that Aggie ball game. Overthrows, underthrows, they're just terrible. But the running game, Hunter, and this transfer from USF, Battie, 21, he is shifty. Shifty as smoke. That cat is pretty good for the Tigers. But you can't beat Georgia being one-dimensional. And I just don't see the passing game being elevated this week going up against Georgia in that front seven. And they're going to eat up that offensive line just like the Aggies did. What, 7 sacks the Aggies had in that ball game? That number 7, too, I was feeling sorry for him after a while. That right tackle for the Tigers. Man, he can't spell speed rush. I mean, they were killing him with it. So I think Georgia wins it. I'm hoping it's competitive, such as last week when we had Ole Miss and Bama in the first half, very competitive. And then, as they always do, Lane Kiffin and his guys okey-doked us and did nothing in the second half. But defensively, there were some guys on that Auburn side, man, that were banging. I mean, the backers and some guys on that D-line, they were bringing it. They were flying to the football. They'll have to do the same thing in this ball game. But defensively, if they got anything from their offense, they might be able to hang. But I just don't see that happening.
Ketch, I'm good. You got anything else?
No, let's wave Brian goodbye, and I just can't wait to see what he's got planned for us next week.
Hey, you know what? Here's what I've realized while we're doing this interview. Brian, all credit to you. You have revolutionized the football video interview today because you realized that you needed to do the interview from 10 yards away. So I just want to congratulate you. It's the 10-yard interview. You're getting us in the mindset of what it takes to get a first down. You got to get past Brian Jones. That's what you got to do.
He has the best shelf space in the business.
He does have a lot of good shelf space.
I got to show you one thing.
Okay. Something from the Brian Jones collection. Oh, my God. Look at that.
Wow.
Me, Brian Jones, and a young Kevin Dunn having some Rudy's barbecue sauce way back in the day.
I think I've seen that picture hanging up at a Rudy's before.
Yes,
really?
Yes. And I got it hanging downstairs. It's downstairs in the house right now, Brian.
I look like a D tackle, man.
You were ready to play that day.
I thought that was Mark Henry for a second.
Oh, shut up. Bye. I'm actually heading to Austin. I gotta go get on a plane. I'm on a panel tomorrow, IBM deal, and I'm flying in tonight. Knock that out, then I'm flying straight to New York tomorrow, right after that deal.
Look, safe travels, my man. Seriously.
Yeah, travel safe, and thank you for the time as always. We'll talk to you next week.
All right.
Brian Jones, CBS Sports.
Brian Jones. Next week will be OU week.
That's not even like a bookshelf. He just has great shelves.
Yeah, that's one of those full wall things where somebody just looked at the wall and said, we're going full office, full shelves, everything. That's a great idea.
One of those.
Yeah, I do too. I'm jealous. I'm jealous of that background. I'm not jealous of the picture. I actually have that one downstairs. I'll never forget that picture, that old studio with the weird stuff strapped around it. And
he took that Mark Henry comment just like I knew he would.
Yeah, he did. He absolutely did. By the way, somebody chatted at us earlier. Did we see Mark Henry visiting Dion and Colorado? I did see a picture today. I retweeted it at C. Hastings OBL, as you can see there. But yeah, a picture of Dion and Mark Henry, that Dion had Mark Henry speak to the team this week. So if Colorado upsets USC, we'll give the world's strongest man some love. We got to get Mark on the show at some point as well. Thanks to Brian Jones, as always, for his time. It is House Divided on a Thursday, getting ready for Texas and Kansas. 2:30, just like that Georgia-Auburn game. Hopefully there'll be no reason to really for the nation to tune into either one of them, because if Georgia handles their business and Texas handles their business, then everything will be good. Everything will be great.
May I make one observation?
Of course.
The wife might have actually been inside the office today. Like literally, he didn't say it, but there wasn't a single curse word from Brian Jones.
Ooh, no, not true. I let him off
the interview.
No, I let him off the hook. There was a mild shit in there. If you listen carefully, he did have a mild shit. I let him have it.
Okay.
There was a quick, quiet little, just a real quick shit, and I let it go.
You set it up, you put the ball on the tee, and I'm not sure he took a swing, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's in there. It was in there. I let him have a technicality since he spent the first half of the interview just half a body on our screen. It's just bizarre. But next week we got to have Brian swear, and we may need to have Brian retell the story of him swearing on the radio Texas OU Friday, because I don't know if you remember that or if you were listening at the time or what you were doing, but it was a classic. We were down there at the Hofbrau, and he starts screaming FOU, and he was not saying F, and it started ringing through those buildings. And the producer back in the studio was trying to dump it all, but he must have said it 8. I bet he said it 8 times in a row. It was unbelievable. So we're going to
kept him on the air. He didn't lose a job.
He did not lose a job because he's Brian Jones. Next week, we will have him say such things about Oklahoma. I know we can get him to swear about Oklahoma next week. That is a no-brainer.
The wifey is at least 30 feet away.
Oh, I think she may have
just whisper it in the microphone.
Yeah. And if need be, I'll talk to the wife. We'll get the wife on the show.
That's a good idea.
We'll have some swear counseling. I'll figure out what the source of her issue is with the swear, and I will tell her that we can allow one for the OU game. And then
we'll wait for National Women's Day and do it like on a Thursday, and all of our wives just do that segment.
Oh, there's an idea. You could do that. You could have my wife live from the bus. My wife could be live on the Cramden cam, live from the bus.
Wendy can ask my wife, is it true that you never cook? And then my wife can say, it's true. My husband's in there cooking right now for me.
And then my wife will say to your wife, well, you need to have him teach my husband so that I can stop cooking. That's what she's going to say.
She's saying, in reality, he only cooks 3 things. So we eat out a lot.
Ah, yes. By the way, speaking of 3 things, we got at least that in the crap bag today. Last night, Bo Scaife was on the Outsiders. Ketch missed the whole interview. I'm going to bring a little bit of it to you in the crap bag today, plus a stat that will blow your mind and a reminder about the CFP as it currently stands and what they discussed yesterday and what they didn't discuss yesterday about moving forward with the CFP. Plus, we've got the voice of the Kansas Jayhawks, Brian Haney, at 2:20. Going to be interesting to get his thoughts on Daniels and the offense and the defense. What does it look like so far? As one of our chatters pointed out today, close game with Nevada, barely won that one. A battle with BYU, but they got it done. I do like that Sandman shot us a serious question.
I just hit the wrong button.
Let me tell you what the serious question was, because I saw it.
Well, yeah, here is the serious question.
Serious question. What's the first offensive play for Kansas?
Zone read?
A lot of people, a lot of people were throwing in what they would want to do. If I'm Kansas, pretty simple. Some kind of run. Neal or Daniels. Set up a run you like. Start that way. I would try to establish with Texas right from the beginning, we're here for a fight. We're here for a physical game. We're going to keep the football from you. I would start with a run.
Michael Simpson has a super chat. There it is.
All right.
If A&M leadership was smart, they'd go all in on Jaylen DeBoer from UW the second they run Jimbo out of town. That would make me nervous.
Ooh, interesting. Wow.
Not a question. He just wanted you to know that.
Yeah. No, it said buy or sell for Chad. I don't know, Michael. I do not know, because that's going to take a ton of money to pull off what you're talking about. So in the spirit of what you're saying, I'll say buy. But
I mean, you'd have to hire somebody cheap.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't know. Jaylen DeBoer is the OC at Washington, is that right?
I think so, yeah.
OC at Washington right now. All right. Thank you, Michael, for that super chat. So we've got the crab bag coming up. Texas and Kansas obviously coming up on Saturday. Real quick catch while we have about 10 minutes here. Yesterday when I had Sukamel on, we talked recruiting. We talked about the big weekend that it's going to be, and the list, the head coach at Washington, my bad, is DeBoer. So we talked about the list of guys that's growing for Saturday and the visits. While we were talking, Colin Simmons became one of those guys, and I know names have been added to the list. Give me a sense for you of, I guess, just how much quality is coming to Austin this weekend in terms of recruiting.
Well, you've got a couple of the major pieces in this remaining 2024 recruiting class that, if you're Texas, you want to close the book with. So you've got Kobe Black coming into town. That's a big one. In the last 24 hours, it might have even been today. It's a little bit of a blur. But Solomon Williams, the edge player out of Tampa, he's confirmed he's going to take an official visit to Texas this weekend. So both Solomon Williams and DeAndre Carter, the offensive tackle from Modern Day, will be there. I think almost more important than those, though, you look at what's coming in from the 2025 class. DeCorian Moore making his second visit in 3 weeks. He's committed to LSU, but he keeps coming to Texas games. You definitely want that. Lamont Rogers is an offensive tackle from Mesquite Horn. I think he's one of the top 3 prospects in the state. I don't think he's as good of a prospect as DeCorian Moore, but I love him as a tackle. You know, they've got a few other 2025 guys, 2026 guys coming in. A safety, Markel Ford from Mesquite Horn, same school as Lamont Rogers. So it's good. You know, thing is, I don't recall the 11 o'clock games are always too early to get a lot of guys in. If they play on Friday nights and they got to make a 2 or 3 hour drive, the idea that oftentimes they'll be up and running but before 7 or 8 and not have team responsibilities, because, you know, most high schools have Saturday morning. It's not necessarily a practice, but you'll lift a little bit of weights, try to get some of the aches and pains. You'll go over film. You know, you do those types of things, and it can be hard to get on the road early. 2:30 kickoff against Kansas. I don't know that a couple of weeks ago that would have been seen as a big recruiting weekend, but it being put at 2:30 allows for a few of these unofficial visitors to make their way in. The game will be over at a decent time. I think from a recruiting standpoint, a lot of times 2:30 is the best kickoff time. It's not too early and it's not too late. You don't want these guys 11 o'clock at night. A lot of times they're coming in with their friends. The idea of, if they're coming in with their families, that's one thing, but you don't necessarily want kids on the road at 2 o'clock in the morning, driving home after being at an away game for, till 11 o'clock at night. So it shapes up really nicely for the Longhorns to have this game at 2:30. Had it been played at 11, you probably wouldn't see the unofficial visitors list look as good as it does. So this worked out really well for the Longhorns when you consider next week's a neutral site game. Then you've got a bye week. It'll be a while before we'll be deep into October before Texas has an opportunity to do this again. So to be able to get Kobe Black on campus is a really big deal. To get DeCorian Moore on again, second time in 3 weeks. You'd like for the offense to put up a little bit more of a fight and show than it did against Wyoming 2 weeks ago. a lot of times these kids don't watch the games as closely as we do. So they don't walk out of it all the time saying things like, well, the game was just too close. I'm not going there. The offense isn't good enough. That's not how prospects watch football. They're usually surrounded by pretty girls, usually talking to each other. They're on their phones. They're doing a million things. Oftentimes watching the game becomes a secondary priority. But when Dakorien Moore comes in for the second time in 3 weeks, you'd like to give him something to think about.
Yeah, and Dakorien Moore, just to clarify, receiver from Duncanville, is that right?
5-star wide receiver from Duncanville, #1 prospect in the state of Texas for the class of 2025.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's going to be a nice group coming in. I was going to ask you, so in terms of this group of guys, obviously Colin Simmons already a commit, of a guy that's not a Texas commit, if you could, like if I could shrink down and be like the Jiminy Cricket size or whatever, and I could get on the shoulder and I could whisper in their ear and get them walking out of Austin thinking, you know what? This might be it. This might be the place. Sark might be the guy. Is there one name you think Texas fans would benefit the most from and this program would benefit the most from? One guy coming this weekend, not a commit now, but would be a big deal if he's a commit walking out.
I think Dakorien Moore is so special. I mean, I've said if you took all of the wide receivers from the state of Texas going, let's say Evan Stewart, Jonte Cook, Micah Hudson, Dakorien Moore, if you were to put them in a hat and you could only draw one name, the hat I think you'd want to draw is Dakorien Moore. I think if I'm ranking all of those wide receivers, and I think they're all game breakers. I think they're all future NFL players. You know, I've never said a bad word about Evan Stewart as a talent once. I love the guy. You and I love Jonte Cook. I think the world of Micah Hudson. I've called him Garrett Wilson 2.0. Dakorien Moore, over all of those guys, is the guy that I would pick. There's a piece of me that wants to pick Lamont Rogers, the offensive tackle out of Mesquite Horn, because I love that guy. But if you could only have one guy, I would pick Dakorien Moore out of Duncanville. I can't stress enough, for a guy that committed to LSU right after Colin Simmons chose Texas and Colin Durham picked LSU. He commits to LSU days later. Him being at Texas twice in 15 days isn't an insignificant deal. It's exactly what you need. You want to cloud his brain. You want him thinking every bit as much about Texas as LSU. It's a long game. I mean, he's not signing for another 16 months or so. So it doesn't have to be a rush, but he's the guy.
By the way, I have not shared this with you yet, but I've discovered this week that there's a decent chance that I'm going to get eyeballs on Mr. Moore and Mr. Simmons live because my Waxahachie Indians have scheduled them for homecoming.
As you would.
So next week, around that 30th reunion that I've got going on, the whole plan was, hey, y'all get a ticket and come see us. And we got a section for the class. So now I'm starting to think, am I going to be able to get a ticket for this game? That's kind of a big deal if Duncanville's coming in. But I hope to see it now because I'll get a look at Simmons and Moore. And I'm sure there's other guys that you and Sukamel would tell me to go watch.
They're loaded.
So
yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. By the way, DeSoto beat Waxahachie like 52-35 or something. So I'm not expecting that one to go. Yeah, I'm not expecting it to go well for Waxahachie overall, but I'm looking forward to seeing them. So that's interesting.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I desperately need a break. Can we take a break? My mouth is parched. I've been like, all of my eyes is stuck together. The damn thing is like one big super block of ice.
That's not, oh my God.
Okay. It does not make, like, I'm parched. Okay. Can we take a break?
Of course.
Because I don't want to be gnawing on this chunk of ice. And I need to go to the boys' room. Like, I need a 3-minute break. I know we haven't taken one in like 15 shows.
Okay.
Can we take a break? We'll come back. I'll be less parched. And then you can do the sinus ad. You can even do that now. Like, however you want it to unfold. I need a couple of minutes.
Okay, let's do a break. Would you prefer the recruiting break or Grilling with Alex? Have you seen Grilling with Alex all the way through yet?
Man, I'm going away from my monitor. I don't care.
Doesn't care. All right. We'll do a recruiting flashback that's about 3 minutes or so. How about that? And then we'll come back. We'll hit you with a little specs, and then we will talk some crap bag today, including that Bo Scaife Q&A from last night that we think you're going to be entertained by. We'll see if Ketch is entertained by it. It is. Everybody else, do what Ketch is doing. Go get you a drink. Go to the bathroom. About 3 minutes, and we'll meet back here. House Divided, Orangebloods Live.
This Orangebloods recruiting flashback takes a look at arguably the most high-profile recruitment in the history of the Texas football program, at least until Arch Manning came along. Yes, I'm talking about former Texas quarterback Chris Sims, who was the nation's #1 ranked prospect when he came out of New Jersey in 1999. Sims took a look around all over the nation early in his recruitment, visiting the likes of Ohio State and Penn State, before eventually setting on his top two. The two UTs, Texas and Tennessee, were his two finalists. After taking an official visit to Austin in the fall of 1998, the Longhorns appeared to be poised to land Sims, which partly helped steer Eli Manning, who also visited Texas in the fall of 1998, to Ole Miss. Yet, when Sims announced his decision on December 15th on the MSG network, he picked the Vols over the Longhorns. Matt Brown later admitted that the Texas coaching staff was shocked by the news. Quote, "I'm proud to be a Vol, and it's a good place for me," Sims said upon his announcement. "I'm a big fan of Coach Fulmer, and I think it fits me right. I feel so relieved, and I can finally get back to being a high schooler and enjoying myself." Yet, the truth of the matter is that Sims wasn't really relieved about the decision, and word got around quickly that he was wavering on his commitment to the Vols almost as soon as he made the announcement. I can remember talking to a Texas source on January 1st of 1999, just before the Longhorns played Mississippi State in the Cotton Bowl, that the Longhorns were going to flip Sims away from Tennessee. A few days following the New Year's Bowl game, Sims called Texas assistant coach Tim Brewster to tell him that he was having second thoughts. Less than 3 weeks later, Sims sat down with his parents, Diana and Phil, you might have heard of him, to reevaluate the decision. The next day, he called Tennessee head coach Phil Fulmer to deliver the news. Sims said, quote, "The hardest thing I ever did in my life. The first thing he said to me was, 'Chris, I'm down here in Alabama recruiting you the best receiver in the country,' end quote." One day later, Sims made things official by flipping his commitment to the Longhorns, which helped cement a #1 overall recruiting class for Brown and his coaching staff. It proved to be a game changer for the Longhorns, as evidenced by the commitment of the big three wide receivers in the following recruiting class: B.J. Johnson, Roy Williams, and Sloan Thomas, as well as paving the way for Cedric Benson's commitment to the Longhorns in the 2001 recruiting class. Ultimately, it was one of the great recruiting moments in the history of the Texas football program.
No matter what you're needing, Specs same-day delivery can save the day with our Specs app or online shopping. From world-class wines to hard-to-find spirits and craft beers to gourmet foods, delicious snacks, and spectacular sweets. It's Specs. Cheers to savings.
Yes, indeed. Shout out to Specs, specsonline.com. Get all stocked up for the games, your watch parties. If you're not headed out to DKR, maybe you're going to be watching the watch along with us. We will do that on Saturday, 2:15. We'll jump in, 2:30, the kick for Texas and Kansas. That is sponsored by the good folks at Pine House Pizza, but also, of course, Specs, because they are the ones that help us with the chat. The Specs chat is fired up for you all the time. So definitely cheers to Specs. And Ketch also mentioned sinus and snoring specialist. Even though I don't officially have a spot today, I'll give him a little extra love. Sinus and snoring specialist, help you sleep better, help you rest better. My wife is ordering her new CPAP coming up and going to try that and see if that can work for her. And hopefully we'll get a lot more quiet sleep, peacefulness going on her side of the bed, because there's some sounds coming from that side of the bed that I ain't got nothing to do with. Not one thing. Sinus and snoring specialists. Feel clear, rested, and healthy. There's your QR code right there. All right. We hit into the 2 o'clock hour now. We are over that top of the hour mark. And you know what? The recruiting flashback catch that was just played was perfect. I don't know if Blake did it on purpose, but right there at the end, you got that famous picture of Chris Sims and a bunch of receivers looking like badasses. And one of them was Bo Scaife. The 3 receivers everybody remembers were in that picture, Roy, BJ, and Sloan. But if you look carefully on the right side of the picture, the far side, that was Bo Scaife. Big number 80 for Texas, I believe. He wore 80, right?
Mm-hmm.
Scaife? Yeah. Bo Scaife was on the Outsiders with us last night, so I thought we should start the crap bag with a little bit from the Outsiders last night because as we're going through the interview, our man Jason Dick came up with the question of the night, and Bo Scaife did a pretty good job with the answer. Check it out.
Bo, thanks for being on the show tonight. Very important, very serious question. As a tight end, on behalf of the tight end community, how big of a win is it that Travis Kelce is smashing Taylor Swift now?
Tight ends are up 1 million right now because of Travis.
I think they're down 1 million. I think Taylor takes you down, bro.
Listen, Chance. If you'll be lucky in this world, if you get to sniff a woman like Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift, I got a daughter, and you got to give props where they're due.
I had Nelly Furtado.
Listen, this woman is amazing all across the world. She has people crying at her concerts. She handles herself well. She's not walking around half naked, none of that stuff. This is an elegant, smart, intelligent woman who is just impacting the entire universe right now. So the fact that Travis Kelce can pull a woman like this and she's really into him and showing up and not really worried about who's going to be there and watching, it just shows you how big football is and how much it brings people together and how everyone loves the game.
There you have it. There you have it.
There's a part of me that wonders, how is Travis Kelce – I realize he's kind of willed this thing to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But how has that happened?
How has it happened that they may be in a relationship?
No, how did Travis Kelce make this happen?
Well, I mean, there was the story about him he went to the show.
I know all of that.
He took the friendship bracelets and reached out and all that kind of stuff. So I think he's working connections, and tight ends are getting it done in a way that they maybe haven't before in our lives. Ketch, just to go along with this, have you seen what our man Jake Ferguson is doing?
No.
You and I are both Cowboy fans. A lot of Cowboy fans watch. I want to make sure everybody understands this. I don't even know who this person is, but let's just give him credit because Jake Ferguson is reportedly dating former Miami basketball player and TikTok star Haley Cavender. Go ahead and Google it. Go ahead and search it. I'm looking at a picture now. Not unattractive. Haley Cavender, as this story says, tight ends across the NFL have been making moves. It is the new power position. So there you go. And the report is that Taylor Swift may very well be at MetLife this weekend for a road game at the Jets. So maybe it is a real deal. I've thrown my theory out, Ketch. They're both 33 years old. They're almost exactly the same age. Taylor's never been into dating guys her age. She always, because of that early fame, has ended up with guys older than her. The Jake Gyllenhaal thing, older than her. John Mayer, older than her. She and the werewolf guy were about the same age, I think. But it's been a while. He's right at her age. It could be perfect. It could be perfect. Yeah, hell of a
those kids nothing but success and happiness as they look to navigate the world.
I do too, man. She's beautiful, talented. He's cool as hell. I like it. I like the idea. She'll be on the Kelce podcast every week. Could be great. She roots for the brothers team, but she dates the other brother. I mean, come on, it's a great story. Great story.
I like that the other brother. I love that Jason Kelce can't be anything other than a Neanderthal.
Yes.
So someone asked him on a podcast earlier this week, had Travis and Taylor Swift gotten to first base yet? And he was like, I sure hope so.
Right. Travis was trying to be classy about it. And I'm going to protect her privacy. She's even more in the public eye than I am and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, Jason's like the rest of us, like, well,
Jason can't help himself.
You go 8-7. You go. Yeah.
He's I've been trying to get some kiss and tell information, but he's really being protective this time. It's like, okay, Jason, really shut up.
Yeah. All credit to them. Hopefully the relationship continues to go well or whatever they needed to do. They're both extremely successful. All right. So Ketch.
I hear Taylor was doing it for media attention because She doesn't get enough.
Yeah, I was going to say, that may be the most moronic thing I've heard in a while. You really think Taylor Swift can't get media attention? Like, what? She's in the middle of one of the most successful concert tours that has ever existed on the planet. You know what she needs? Social media hits. No, that's not.
People are getting tired of her.
My God. All right. So I got few stats for you here, Ketch, out of baseball, because you and I are both baseball guys and specifically numbers guys. The sport is so into numbers. I'm assuming you've been following. Absolutely. You've been following the whole Ronald Acuna thing, right? So here's my quiz down for everybody. First off, Ketch, can you tell me, other than Ronald Acuna, how many baseball players have had a 40-40 season, home runs and stolen bases?
Well, Canseco famously did it the first time.
He did. Very good. In 88.
Feels like someone else did it. Did Mookie Betts do it?
Mookie Betts has not done it. Good guess, though.
Who's the second?
Barry Bonds.
Barry Bonds, okay.
Barry in 96 had 42 and 40. There have been two others besides Acuna to pull it off. A-Rod did it in 98, 42 and 46, respectively. And the other one I had forgotten about was Alfonso Soriano did it. Back in 2006, he went 41 and 46. But here's the crazy thing about Acuna. If you're not following this story, Ronald Acuna has now become the fifth guy to go 40-40. But then he went 40-50. 40 homers, 50 stolen bases. So he's the only guy to ever do that. Well, then he cranked it up again and went 40-60. And now he's gone 40-70. 40 jacks, 70 stolen bases. But Ketch, these comparison numbers are the ones that blew me away. He's got 41 homers right now. That is, follow me here, 13 more homers than the closest player that has 70 or more stolen bases ever. You're following?
Before him, somebody went 28 and 70.
So before, correct. The closest person that had 70 stolen bases and that is as close to the home runs is Ricky Henderson, but he's 13 homers away. On the other side of it, he has 70 stolen bases. That's 24 more bags than the last guy that hit 40 homers that would have had whatever the stolen bases was, and that was A-Rod in his 40-40 year. Ronald Acuna Jr. is doing something that is so silly. Again, only 5 guys now have ever done the 40-40. He's now in 3 different clubs that he made himself, and he's all alone. 40-50, 40-60.
I feel like if anybody had ever told Ricky, hey, Ricky, in 40 years from now, this guy named Acuna is going to go for 40-70.
Yeah.
I think Ricky would have went 70-70. Like, I think Ricky just didn't know that this would be a thing.
You might be right. Yeah, you might be right. I was amazed that Ricky, because with Ricky, it's the home run numbers that weren't going to get there, right? As consistently. He wasn't hitting those kind of home runs as consistently. Acuna's been silly. Also, only the second Atlanta Brave to steal 70 bags since 1900. Him and Otis Nixon. That's it.
Well, it's really impressive because, like, teams don't steal as much anymore.
Right.
This isn't the era of the stolen. It's not like the St. Louis Cardinals of the 80s where it was like, Coleman and McGee and like that whole team was just constantly running on the base paths. Teams like have their guys stand on the base and they want the guys at bat to knock them in. Yeah. And so it's impressive that he's at 40-70, given that this isn't the 40-70 era.
Yeah, you're right. It's amazing. So I just thought we'd share some of those stats because they were mind-boggling. And the other thing I wanted to mention today in the crap bag catch is just the update on the CFP. I talked about it a little bit earlier in the week. I talked about it a little bit yesterday when you were out. But yesterday was meetings where they kind of looked at the format and do they need to change it moving forward for the expanded playoff. Because remember, they set all this up for a 12-team playoff in college football before the Pac-12 exploded or imploded or fell apart or whatever you want to say. So yesterday, basically, they tabled everything. They're not going to make a decision on it because they want to see what happens with the Pac-12. But let's all understand what that means. if they do nothing, next year they have agreed on a 6-6 platform. So 6 conference champions will get in. And right now you think of that as, well, the 5 Power 5s and a G5. I agree with you, but think about it. If there's no Pac-12, then it means 4 power conferences and 2 G5s. Or, like I suggested earlier, the Mountain West and the Pac-2, those last teams, they combine for a 14-team conference that will all call the Pac something, Pac-14, but you'll have like Wyoming all of a sudden is a Power 5 team. And San Diego State's a Power 5 team, and Boise, and so on.
The more you talk about it, the more I'm against it.
Well, that's one of the things that, again, and so then if you do that, here's the question though, Ketch. If you make a Pac-14, you could make them G5. You don't have to make them a power conference. So they'll have to have that discussion. But again, I will bring back what I did earlier, which is the money part of it that I didn't realize till this week. I knew all 10 conferences were in this thing, but Ketch, I did not realize that the power conferences split 80% of the money and the G5 split 20. So just imagine what that means for either, just take both sides. Let's take Washington State and San Diego State. You're going to say to one of them, hey, remember how y'all used to split that 80% of CFP? It now goes down to 20%. As somebody whose job situation just changed pretty drastically and the money changed pretty drastically, that's a big deal if you go from 80 to 20. But on the other side, what if you tell San Diego State, hey, you know that check y'all are getting for 20% of the CFP? It's about to go to 80. Y'all are going to get 80.
Which is 20% split up amongst everybody, right?
Right.
So
you're going to get 80 split. And then for everybody else, this is why I think this matters for anybody who's a fan of college football, Ketch. If you're a fan of Texas right now or A&M or anybody, you're already getting a cut that is 80%. They take a big 80% blob of the CFP money and they give it to you. They divide it and hand it to you. But if you kick the Pac-14, whatever, let's say that exists, or the Pac-2, whatever, if you kick them down to G status, you get more money. Then the 80% gets divided over less teams, and they're going to hand you a bigger check. If you're the new SEC, you're already getting a bigger check for
the SEC and the Big Ten. The comedy in this, Chad, is in the Big 12. It's Baylor and Texas Tech and the schools that for a little bit looked like they were going to be SOL.
Right, but they're going to get more money. They would get more money now, right?
And now they'd be like, no, we don't think Washington State and Oregon State should get a cut. Let them go share their 20. We'll take their 80.
It really depends on how you're looking at this. Now, the other way you could look at it, and you still make money in a way, is if you have, instead of it being a G5 and you make it a G4, you still have Power 5. You allow that Pac conference to be a conference, right? Well, now you have a G4. Well, guess what? That means you take the 20% money and you're dividing it among 4 conferences, not 5. Guess where the rest of that money goes? To you, to the power, to the SEC and the Big 10 and the Big 12. Like you said, the Big 12 teams that get to laugh, and Arizona gets to go, oh my God, what check did they just write us? This is amazing. So just pay attention over the next couple of weeks and months, but just prepare for next year. That first 12-team playoff, Catch, it could involve 2 teams that we all kind of roll our eyes for and go, oh, good Lord, the Mountain West champ and the MAC champ are getting into this thing. Because remember what they've said is it's the highest ranked conference champions. Well, once you get past the 4 you care about, if you only say you care about 4 at the power level, then you have 2 spots to fill. And it doesn't mean they have to be ranked. It just means they have to win the conference. So just keep all that in mind as we get ready for this CFP discussion. I think it affects everyone, and they're still trying to figure out some of those details. Here's the scariest thing I read today, though, Ketch. When, what's his name? What's the guy's, the CFP? Oh, Hancock. When Bill Hancock, who runs the CFP, when he said, there's never been a conference with only 2 teams, but that doesn't mean it couldn't happen. And I'm like, wait a minute, Bill. Even the NCAA has something in a rule book that says you have to have 8 teams to have an FBS conference. Let's not go backing it off to where we're going to let the Beavers and the Cougars be their own conference and give them power status, and you're going to give them a spot in the playoff? Come on.
Don't be a snob.
We can't do that.
Don't be a snob. Let them have the Pac-2.
No.
And whatever glory comes out of it.
Catch. Pac-14.
If you only have one team in your conference, how big is that game?
Oh, my God.
Forget about the Red River Shootout, Iron Bowl, and it's literally when they say it's for all the marbles, it's for all the marbles.
It is for all the marbles. Wait, hang on. Do I have it here? Yeah, I do. Hey, Washington State, who's your conference schedule? This right here. That's it right there. That's the schedule. Who are you playing, Tim?
That's it. Don't begrudge them that. I'm just saying.
Oh, my God. I think we could all agree that you'd respect the 14 more than that. I think I could get used to San Diego State as a Pac-14 team before I could get used to a 2-team comp. What do media days look like?
Are those the only options, though?
Right now, that's what they may be the only options we're talking about. What is media day like? The Beaver mascot and the Cougar mascot show up. 2 head coaches
on separate days, Chad, to spread out the interviews.
Welcome to Beaver Day at the Pac-2. Tomorrow is Cougar Day, so come back if you want.
Yeah, because they do that in the Big 12. It's like Oklahoma and Texas always speak on separate days so that you can maximize the amount of attention that you get on a Pac-2 day. You just definitely have to spread it out. Can't all be on one day.
Unbelievable. All right, so that wraps us up on the crap bag. Sorry, I went a little rambly there. I think our next guest is ready to roll, and we are honored to have this one because he's the man who's going to be calling the Kansas side of things on radio this week. He is the voice of the Kansas Jayhawks. Let's bring him in, see if we can find out a little bit more about this team. He is Brian Haney. Brian, great to speak with you. It's been a long time and great to see you. How are you, brother?
Doing great, fellas. Thanks so much for having me. Excited about Saturday. And obviously we're all walking a couple inches taller around Lawrence right now to have football be relevant again on top of what Bill Self continues to do with basketball. So it's a great time to be a Jayhawk. And certainly we're sad to come to Austin for the final time. It was always our favorite road trip in the Big 12. And with the schedule released for basketball this week, we found out you guys are coming here. We're not going back down there. So this is it this weekend. So if you got any must-visit restaurants or bars for us on our final go-round of the 512, I am all ears. I would love to receive them, fellas. Thank you.
Well, that was going to be – I guess that should be the first thing. I was going to ask you, is there a go-to that you've hit over the years that you're thinking, man, I got to hit blank like one more time?
Now, you know what? We spread it around food-wise, but we always make sure if it's a Friday night, we go out as a crew on 6 streets and hear a little bit of live music and walk up and down and take it all in. But, yeah, to think that that's coming to an end is a shame because really, while every Big 12 town has something to offer, no town has as much to offer as Austin does. And so we're certainly going to miss you guys in the league and so many great friendships that have developed over the last 30 years, including you and me, Chad. And hopefully we'll find other reasons to talk and maybe cross paths in March Madness or something like that. But definitely going to make the most of this last go-round for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, Brian, there is a game, and it's actually a really interesting, potentially very entertaining game on Saturday. It's a game with maybe the 2 best quarterbacks in the Big 12, 2 undefeated teams, 2 ranked teams. What's the vibe for what this week is for Kansas? It obviously isn't a game that would make their entire season, but if they were to come in and win this game, it would seem like it would be quite a catapult for what's possible in this final season of this iteration of the Big 12.
Well said. I think there's so much to gain if you win it. there's not a ton to lose if you lose it because you're not expected to win it necessarily, but you want to have a good showing regardless. And I think the mood around the Kansas locker room and football complex is one of excitement to be a part of a national showcase game, to be one of the 3 teams ranked in the Big 12 right now with Oklahoma and Texas, and have this top 25 head-to-head with the whole nation watching, and knowing how far we've come in the 2 years that have followed that crazy 57-56 Kansas upset going back to 2021. Lance Leipold has made it very clear we're not to talk about that game. We're going to talk about where our boots are firmly planted right now in the here and the now at 2023. Obviously, Texas came into Lawrence last year and boat raced the Jayhawks, and so they're not trying to talk about what happened 24 months ago. But Ketch and Chad, the truth of the matter is Kansas would not be as far along in the ascension of this program under Lance Leipold were it not for what happened that night. That was a launch pad and a springboard to so much that got Kansas fast-tracked to bowl eligibility a year ago and Big 12 relevance and contention in year 3 under Lance Leipold. Without it, I don't think you see them nearly as far along as they are right now, because it gave this team a confidence that they can compete week in and week out with anybody, no matter where they're playing or who they're up against. And they took that into the offseason, had a tremendous spring and summer that led to a 5-0 start to the year last year. And as you'll recall, the hosting of ESPN College Game Day before Jaylen Daniels went down with the shoulder injury. They still made a bowl game, still had 6 wins, first bowl appearance for us in 14 years. But they kept building. And they got Lance Leipold a new contract. He reaffirmed his commitment to Kansas. The new stadium plans were unveiled. And man, it's a thing of beauty. You can check it out if you go to our website at kuathletics.com and search for the Gateway Project. It's a really, really cool advancement in what we hope will be consistent and sustained football success, something we haven't had much of over the years. And so all of that was set in motion by that tangible, you can taste it, you can reach out and grab it win in Austin. It's one thing to point to progress in moral victories, but when they got that big win late in the season in 2021, it was something they could really point to with the donor base, the recruits, but most specifically, Ketch, the belief between the ears of the guys on that current team. And many of those guys are back and a part of the game this week. As I'm sure you guys know, we returned 91% of our offensive production from a year ago, an offense that averaged 36 points per game. We returned 85% of our overall roster production, which is second best in the country. And so a lot of those guys were also part of the team 2 years ago and have that memory of going down to Austin in 2021. And you can't speak to the value of that, not because it's going to lead to huge, progress this week necessarily, but just the belief and the confidence that you can go in there and not be intimidated by the environment and the atmosphere. I think there is some real merit and value to speak to there. So we're excited to be a part of it. I don't think they're overconfident. There's more reverence and respect for this opponent than any they'll go up against, but they're not in awe or they're not wide-eyed heading in because they feel like they belong in the conversation and this is their chance to prove it. But they know in every phase of the game, every phase, this is the toughest foe they will have faced to date. And yes, it helps that Illinois had 2 preseason All-American defensive linemen, but this is a better defense than what Illinois brought in. And it helps that they've faced a good quarterback, and what we saw a week ago with Slovis. But obviously, Ewers brings it stronger. And so there's a lot of things that are ratcheted up several notches this week. But our guys will come in humble but hungry, confident, excited, and let's just see what happens. And if you lose the game but have a good showing, it doesn't derail the overall hope, which is to make it to Dallas and be a part of a December 2nd Big 12 title game. You're still on track for that. But if you somehow did steal the win, look out. Kansas will have announced to the league and the nation that they've arrived, and that's what's there for the taking if they could possibly get it done on Saturday.
Yeah, big time stuff. A lot of truth will be revealed on Saturday. Brian, let's go right to the quarterback. You'll be shocked to know we've been talking some Jaylen Daniels this week on the show. Good. And specifically today. But also we were focusing in on the running part of it. Clearly the passing is impressive, 76% completion. But we've been asking the question of how much he might run in this game. The numbers seem pretty clear. About 9 carries a game is where they've had him so far. Do you think Coach Leipold would like to dial that number up a little bit and get him into double digits on the run game? Or do you think he would like to come to Austin and count on Neal and the other running backs to carry all the load?
Tough to say. I mean, this has been a really good running offense. I mean, heading into league play, we were 15th in the nation in rushing yards per game, and Devin Neal was in the top 10 in numerous running categories. I think he's a future pro. I think Highshaw's a future pro. They got a lot to like there, but obviously yards are going to be so tough to come by against you guys' defensive front, and they know that. Specific to Jaylen Daniels' rushing numbers, hard to know exactly how many more they'd want to get out of him. I think the big focus, whether it's in the drop back passing game, the option pitch game, whatever, he needs to make his decisions quickly. The ball needs to come out very rapidly. And if he's running around back there, design run is one thing. Running around too much to try to extend the play and ultimately taking a sack is another. We know Texas is going to bring the heat. And so they want him to get the ball out quick, to be decisive in his reads and not try to play hero ball and make something happen all on himself, because sometimes you have the tendency to do that as a dual threat capable quarterback. And while he can certainly stretch the pocket, extend the play, and dazzle us, as we've seen so many times in his Kansas career, this is a different kind of defensive front he's up against than what he's faced to date. And so I think they just want to make sure whatever they do with him, it comes quickly before Texas can really get to him, and they want to keep him as upright as possible. But he's one of those guys that, his career trajectory, much like this program's, shot to the moon after what happened on that night in Austin 2 years ago. And we'll see. I know Texas is primed to make different kinds of memories this year and primed to stop him. But I think goes without saying he will be the most challenging QB threat they will have faced in the first month as well. And we're proud of what our skill guys bring. They may not pass the eyeball test like a Xavier Worthy or a Whittington or something like that, but our receiving core and our tight end group is very, very productive. And I think I would look for Jaylen to spread the ball around, mix in a decent number of runs. I don't know if it's more than on par for him, but I do think that the big objective is get it out fast, because we don't want to see what this Texas pass rush can do if they get all the way to Jaylen. And a big part of our season's goals and trajectory and competing for a Big 12 spot come December 2nd is keeping him healthy. It was this same week, or 1 week earlier, I guess it would be this season, that he went down last year. So trying to keep him healthy. And don't overlook the fact that Jason Bean is very much a part of this team as well. And we have an embarrassment of riches, much like you guys do at quarterback. I think a lot of programs would love to have the Texas and Kansas situations, to have not just one really good option, but a couple of them. And Bean is clearly a guy that can't be overlooked should JD get shaken up in this one. Ton of starting experience, a senior with savvy, and used to be a standout just up the road at North Texas before he transferred to Kansas. And so we've got two very good ones we're certainly proud of here at KU.
Brian, a little bit of a two-parter here. I'm curious, from your perspective, when Daniels came back into this matchup a year ago, he'd had all that time off. You could tell there just wasn't quite the chemistry, the connection that they had when they were really cooking earlier in the season. You could tell that the injury robbed them of that cohesiveness. So after missing the first game of the season and now playing in the last three, what's the difference between Daniels right now and what Texas would have seen a year ago when he didn't quite have that same chemistry? And then the second part of the question is, we saw Wyoming come in 12 days ago, and it's a 10-10 game going to the fourth quarter, and it felt like running the clock, shortening the game, getting the game to, let's say, the midpoint of the fourth quarter, and it being a one-score game seemed like their approach, and a really healthy approach. Do you feel like even if they do it a slightly different way, that would be the Kansas approach, to run the ball, to try to eliminate as many offensive series for Texas as possible, so that you get into the fourth quarter and it's like, well, how did we get to a 20-17 game? And it feels like it should be in the first quarter and it's in the fourth quarter. Do you sense that that's part of how they would want to approach this? Or is this team just more wide open than that, and they can score enough points that they're not really concerned with shortening the game?
They are more wide open than that, and yet it's an interesting observation, because last week in the fourth quarter versus BYU, we saw Kansas execute that script to a T, and it was so satisfying and gratifying as a longtime Jayhawk, because we've seen that wear you down, shorten the game, run out the clock in the fourth quarter, put this game on ice. We've seen that at our expense for the better part of a decade and a half, and now Kansas, with the strong physical ground attack up front with the offensive line, but two great horses back there that are pulling that plow all the way to the goal line and chewing up 6-7 minutes of clock time, shortening the game in the fourth quarter, punishing you when you're tired and it's hot and it's late. Kansas was the enforcer. Kansas was the one imposing its will on BYU, and you could see the Cougars wearing down in that one. So we've seen that. Having said that, it's going to be a lot tougher to do that to Texas, obviously. Goes without saying. I don't know what to expect out of our ground attack against a Texas front seven that will be as good as any we face all year, all the All-American and future draft pick talent that Texas will trot out there. So would they love to do that? Sure. Easier said than done. And I don't think you want to down throttle too much with this offense that feels capable of scoring 40 on any given game. Last week was kind of rare, guys. It took 2 defensive touchdowns to really get us going. And Jaylen Daniels only passed for 130 yards on the day, which is so atypical for him. This is an offense that, as I said, averaged 36 a game a year ago. They should compete to average 40 most weeks this season. But last week's game script was just not one that favored that. And I'll be curious to see if this is a true track meet early or if you have some longer sustained drives that limit the number of possessions over the course of the game. But I'll be really interested to see how all that unfolds. I forget the first half of the question. The second half
about Jaylen and how different Jaylen is coming into this game than he would have been.
Let me tell you, Ketch. You saw a guy that was obviously, rusty, and he remained rusty until the third quarter of the bowl game. We were talking versus Arkansas in the AutoZone Liberty Bowl after another 3-and-out to start the second half. Man, do they need to give Jason Bean a look here? He's just not in sync with his receivers. What ensued was the ultimate stick with your guy and let him reward you formula, because by the end of the night in Memphis, he did something that no FBS quarterback has ever done in bowl history. Over 500 yards, 5 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown. He was phenomenal down the stretch. If you missed that game, not only did Kansas, rally back from 3 scores down, but Lance Leipold and his illustrious coaching career that includes the fastest coach in college football history to 100 wins, he had never in his career before ever successfully recovered an onside kick. They got that as well for Coach. And Daniels was brilliant down the stretch. Ends up being a triple overtime thriller that we lose in 3 OTs. But that game alone is what put him on the map as preseason Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. And I reference that to say that, what we saw in late November and even for the first half of that December game was not the vintage JD that we're now starting to see more and more of this season. I was impressed with how he came out the gates versus Illinois with not a whole lot of rust after missing the bulk of the month of August, and how effective he was. So there's still several gears he's yet to kick it into, but he's been awfully good in the 3 games we've seen to this point. And yet, as I keep saying and beating the dead horse on here, this will be on a different level than the degree of challenge we've faced to this point. So really curious to see what that looks like. But the good news is that they're not breaking in any newbies heading down there to Austin. Every passing target he throws to, every running back he hands it off to, every guy blocking for him out in front has been there before in Big 12 settings like this, if not specifically Austin. And that certainly bodes well for the Jayhawks' chances of coming in and competing at a high level.
Yeah, Brian, last one from me, and I wanted to ask you about a couple of his weapons. Obviously, Devin Neal. You mentioned earlier you thought Devin Neal has a chance to be an NFL player. I want you to talk about him a little bit, but also I love a story where a guy from Texas gets to come back to Texas, and Lawrence Arnold was here 2 years ago, caught, I think, 3 or 4 balls, but he wasn't the focus guy. Now he's the leading receiver on this team, and he's a DeSoto product for the people that don't know. So he gets to come back home again. Talk to me a little bit about Neal and Arnold and how good they've been.
Well, let's give Devin Neal some extra love because he committed to Kansas when we didn't have anything going for us. He was the number 1 recruit in the state of Kansas and committed to this program when we were coming off a losing season, as in all losses, like no wins. And he didn't have a glitzy new stadium to look forward to, or, bowl appearances and recent, winning success to point to. He took a leap of faith to bet on his hometown team, and now he's being rewarded richly. But what a career he's had. Texas fans, I don't have to remind you, he was in the end zone 3 times in Austin 2 years ago. That was the breakout game. That's when I started calling him Real Deal Devin Neal, a name that now is pretty household around here. He's gotten better and better every year. He added 20 pounds to his frame his freshman year when he came in, initially focused on being both a football and a baseball player. And much like Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech, that dream lasted for about 10 days in the spring. He got in for a handful of baseball games, and he thought, you know what, my real calling, both at this level and the next, is on the gridiron. And so he's gone all in football. I think there's an extra gear that he's kind of unleashed in terms of acceleration and downfield breakaway speed that we've seen him tap into this year. But both he and Daniel Highshaw, I think the Pro Football Focus people would tell you, are significant prospects eventually, whether that's next year or the year after. Highshaw was that before a hip injury last year derailed his season halfway through, and he's been a tremendous story in battling back from that. But it's a great 1-2 punch. And then Lawrence Arnold, there's a myriad of options for Jaylen Daniels to throw to, but his big yardage guy is Arnold. He's been the leading receiver in terms of yardage the last couple of seasons, and he's the most trusted downfield option. Quentin Skinner, a former walk-on from the state of Oklahoma, is also a vertical threat. He'll wear the number 0, big, tall, wiry, thin guy, but also a deep threat. But I think Lawrence is the most trusted on the explosive play options. And then don't look past the Grim Reaper now. Luke Grimm, he's our Wes Welker, Julian Edelman type, possession receiver guy, go over the middle, make the tough catch in traffic. I think he's one of those guys that could have a say in the outcome of this game as well. He wears the number 11. So 3 really good receivers. And then an Austin kid that's starting to get more snaps, Keaton Quebeca, he's coming home this weekend. Could this be the breakout game for a guy that played at Westlake? We'll see, but a lot of eyes on him as an Austin native heading into Saturday as well.
Nice. Brian, last question. I promise it won't be War and Peace this time. I realized 5 minutes into asking that last question, did I talk too much? And then when you'd forgotten the first question, I realized I did. Real simple. The end of the first quarter ends. You'll know that this game is going well for Kansas if ...
Ooh, great question. They don't have to be out in front, but I'd like to have seen at least one drive that was capped with a touchdown. We'll see if it's truly a track meet early going back and forth, but I want to see Kansas with the confidence they're taking down there. I'd like to see that swagger sustained with the offense able to move the ball and the defense at least holding their own. Hey, we all remember 427 rushing yards allowed last season, I should say. And I know that even though Bijan and Johnson are off to the NFL with the Falcons and Bears, that still with Jonathan Brooks coming back and a bevy of other talented backs that you guys could hang a big number on us again. But we'd like to see the defense at least get off the field once in that first quarter. I'd love to see the offense go down and score. If so, it could be a really entertaining afternoon for all 4 quarters. But they don't have to necessarily match them point for point, drive for drive, but show me something on both sides of the ball, and we'll know that Kansas could settle in for a long afternoon because there's enough firepower offensively and enough confidence to point to with this group that they feel like they can stay in it. And I hope that's the case because no matter who wins, if we get what you would expect in a top 25 head-to-head on a Big 12 Saturday, which is a competitive game in the 4th, then I think we're all in for a treat, and it should be a really memorable day in our last trip for a long, long time to DKR, man. We're looking forward to it.
Gonna soak up Austin one more time. Yep. Brian Haney, the voice of the Kansas Jayhawks, at B Haney on Twitter. If you want to give him a follow, that's HANNI. Brian, safe travels to and from Austin for that last time in football. You're one of my favorite stories in our business, man. I know how much you love it, and you do a hell of a job. So great to see you and talk to you for the first time in a while. And have a good weekend. Not too good a weekend. These Texas fans have really expensive TVs. We don't want them breaking them, but have a good weekend. Up to a point.
That's a nice way of saying he wants my Friday night on 6th Street to go better than my Saturday afternoon.
There you go. I like That's the way I should have said it. Hopefully the Friday goes better than the Saturday, but
Nothing but love for you guys, man. I respect your athletic department, but especially you two as much as any. And hopefully, like I said, we'll cross paths either in a bowl game or March Madness or something in years to come, because we think the world of you guys. So best of luck, and we'll talk to you real soon.
There you go. And go easy on the rest of that Big 12 once you get to there next year. Would you just be careful. Don't push them around too much.
Thanks, Chad. We'll do.
There you go. Brian Haney, ladies and gentlemen.
See, I disagree with you. I want them to push the rest of the conference around.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. But just be careful. Don't be too much of a bully is what I'm saying. Right?
I want them to bully.
It's just that's not I don't know that. Well, it's Kansas's way in one sport. We know, maybe not in football. They got to get used to doing it.
It would be hilarious if by 2030 we're like Kansas just won 6 or 7 straight, just because the Baylor and the Texas Tech fans. Can you imagine that?
Oh my God! If they become the new Oklahoma, and it's just every year they're just racking trophies up.
I want to see that. That would be fantastic.
Hey, I've been to the place where they put them. They got this incredible sports hall of fame right there at Allen Fieldhouse, and they just stacking trophies in there. So maybe that's where they do it. Thanks to Brian for his time. He's one of my favorite stories. Class of 2002 in Kansas. This is his dream job. He busted his ass to get it, and he's been the voice of the Jayhawks since 2016. So hopefully they have a great call on Saturday. We'll see if it's going to be the type of game that is worthy, like he said, of a ranked type matchup. Is Kansas going to push Texas like that? Or is it going to be the Texas domination that a lot of Texas fans believe it is going to be? We'll continue to get into that the rest of today, a little bit left. And then, of course, tomorrow we'll be back for the Friday show. We got Scottish Guy tomorrow at 2:15, of course. And don't forget, watch along on Saturday, 2:30 kick, Texas and Kansas. Ketch and myself, if you haven't checked out the watch-alongs, jump on in. We've had thousands of you doing that. We appreciate that. Here's another super chat coming in. $1.99. What does Lou Holtz think about this?
I want to see Lou. I want moving forward.
Yes.
For there to be a Lou Holtz segment, like there's a Scottish Guy segment. Every week, Lou Holtz just picks on somebody in college football that he wants to have a go at.
Just a Lou Holtz. So I'm not sure what. Oh, this was maybe the CFP. What does he think about the CFP? Well, see, here's the deal with the CFP. So what you got to do, you can't have a 2-team conference. So you got to have more teams in the conference, and you can't have Wyoming in the conference because that doesn't make sense because they're damn Wyoming. That doesn't make sense. So what you have to do is Notre Dame's in every year. That's how you start. Notre Dame's in. Okay. And then Arkansas is, you give them 4 wins to start every year because I coach them. And I went to Kent State, so in their part of it, they're going to be in. And then you just have everybody else play a round robin, and then you go to Houston and play the championship game. That's what I do.
Coach, you sound good today.
Is that worth your $1.99? I sound good because I'm ready to kick Ryan Day's ass. That's why I sound good.
Yeah.
That's a problem. That rouge-faced bastard started running his mouth. I got a little something.
Hey, Chad. Sorry to interrupt Coach Holtz there. Brian said something that was really interesting to me. I hadn't thought a lot. I mean, I remember last year's game, right? Duh. And I remember that Bijan and Roshan and Jonathan, I remember 430 yards.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that I remembered 430. So when he said it, I was like, oh, yeah. I remember Bijan looked phenomenal a year ago. That's right. That was because the thing is, I had done a pregame recorded interview with the Jayhawk. It was John Kirby's from Jayhawk Slant.
Yeah.
And I told him, I was trying to explain to him that Bijan Robinson, I was like, I don't know that you guys know, but he's special. And I really laid it on thick. I can remember where I was in the interview. I was right in front of my kid's school, and I was on the phone, and I was just lavishing praise onto Bijan. And then Bijan in the game goes 25 for 243 and 4 touchdowns. And I remember thinking the people that listened to that interview, they knew going in. If they didn't know, I tried to warn them that Bijan's this good. When I did the interview with John Kirby this week, I lavished the praise on Xavier Worthy. And I said, and what I didn't remember was that last year in this game, Worthy had 2 catches for 30 yards. And that's it. From a passing game standpoint last year, and the weather wasn't great, Quinn Ewers was 12 of 21 for 107 yards. He threw 1 touchdown. It was a very modest passing day. If you look at what the Longhorns did this week in that game from a year ago, Whittington led the team with 6 for 56. Worthy had 2 for 30. And then the only other 2 receivers that caught passes, Savion Red had 2 for 8. And Jatavion Sanders had 1 catch for 1 yard.
Wow.
And I just feel like in this year's game, they're going to flip that.
Oh,
that the passing game is going to be where Texas does its damage. And given that a year ago I lavished praise on Bijan and he went huge in that game, I'm now expecting Xavier Worthy to have an All-American. Xavier Worthy hasn't had an All-America game level performance yet. And I think this is the week we see it.
Yeah, no, I think you could be right. I think that it definitely does feel like it would be a flip. And they hung a double nickel on him, right? 55 is what it was, 55-14.
It was a lot to a little. The final score
that right?
was 55-14.
There you go. But here's the other thing, I think, for a Texas fan.
And 31-0 at the half.
The thing about that game, though, Ketch, and just double checking where it was on the schedule, it was literally the week after TCU. So to take Texas fans back to something else they don't want to think about, but the day that Cedric Benson had a great day in Stillwater, that was good. But any Texas fan you talked to that day went, well, yeah, but where was that last week? Well, what do you mean? What was last week? Last week was when Mac Brown didn't trust him in the OU game. And now we get to see this. Texas fans had watched, 12 carries, I think it was, and no touches in the fourth quarter or whatever those numbers were against TCU. Hard for them to truly appreciate what they were watching against Kansas because they were sort of looking at Sark like, really? Now's the time when you're unleashing the running game on them after a ranked TCU came to town with game day and you laid an egg. That's where that game, I think, sat for most Texas fans.
By the way, last year's game was 36 degrees.
Oh,
it was late in November. It was cold. It was cold.
Didn't
Texas
recall that.
Just ran the ball on them. I'm just curious when Kansas thinks back to what Texas did really well. Because when Brian mentioned, we remember what Robinson and John, I wanted to tell him, hey, just so you know, the run game ain't that. This is a decent run game, maybe even a good running game, but Texas isn't going to run Texas isn't running for 430 yards on Saturday.
No.
There's a much better chance that they throw for that kind of yardage than they run for it.
Yeah, if you believe the numbers so far, Texas is at 67 in the country running the ball, 36 throwing it. So the strength has clearly been the passing game. It's what they'll want to do. But it's also, Ketch, why they'll want to be careful a little more than they had to be last year. It was cold and nasty. They ran the ball and smacked them around. But when you're throwing the ball a little more, this is an opportunistic Kansas defense. Brian Haney just talked about it. We've talked about it this week. 3rd in the country in defensive touchdowns. They had 2 of them. Now it's all in one game. But last week they had 2 defensive scores. Kobe Bryant, the talent that's on this defense. You've mentioned all the transfer talent they've got on that front. There are going to be guys in this game wearing blue that if you're a Texas fan, you're going to go, all right, that's a pretty good football player. That's a pretty good football player. If you just use your real eyes, there's some good football players coming, and Texas is going to need to put a good game together to make sure they handle the business.
Pop quiz.
Yes.
It's a 3-parter.
3-part pop quiz. Here we go.
How many sacks did Texas have in this game a year ago?
How many sacks did Texas have in a 55-14 win over Kansas? I'm going to say 3. Goose egg. Wow. Okay, no sacks.
We've been talking about the Jaylen Daniels run game. How much do we see on Saturday?
Mm-hmm.
Pop quiz, how many rushing attempts did Jaylen Daniels have in this game a year ago?
rushing attempts for Jaylen Daniels. It did not go well. 55-14. They're chasing a lot. I'm going to say it was like 5.
2 for 12 yards.
Damn. Even lower than I'm thinking.
Like it just wasn't a part of what they did in that game last year.
Well, you said it was 31-0 at one point, right?
31-0 at halftime.
Yeah, eventually you just can't. Eventually you got to stop. Eventually you're just having a chunk.
It's like, we're already down 31-0. Let's not risk anything.
Yeah.
Don't
get him killed either. Yeah.
And finally, buy or sell. It's not a buy or sell. Sorry, instincts kicked in there.
That was good. I like that.
Texas turned Kansas over one time last year.
Uh-huh.
Do you remember the who and the how?
Texas had a turnover they turned them over one time last year. I don't recall, so I'm just going to throw a guess out. I'm going to say it was
one really good educated guess.
I'm going to say it was Jaylen Ford with a pick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jaylen Ford, as part of that 8 created turnovers in the last 11 games that he's played, 6 of them being interceptions. One of those was in this game a year ago when he got Mr. Daniels in the study with a candlestick.
Very, very nice. All right. So we're just about ready to wrap it up here. You got anything else you need to get in?
Goodbye.
Just a goodbye. Excellent. All right. So coming up tonight at 9:00, it is the Outsiders. We'll get our official predictions in. Our man, Chris Abbott, I think threw in like a 58-10, 58-3, something like that. Like he thinks it's going to be an absolute whitewashing for Texas. And I think most of the Outsiders guys are like that. So what will they do when I tell them I'm picking Texas by 8? I have no idea. They may kick me off the show. They're going to kick me off that show at about 9:02 and then go the rest of the way. But 9:00 tonight is the Outsiders. And then right now, coming up at 3:30, it is Football with Friends with Alex Dunlap. We'll be back tomorrow with a Friday show, final wrap-ups and predictions and breakdowns of Texas and Kansas. We'll get you the Scottish guy at 2:15, all the normal Friday stuff. So join us, won't you? Have a good rest of your Thursday. Until noon tomorrow.